I'm going to call the meeting to order this evening. We're reconvening to open session. If everyone could just stand and say the pledge. Our flag is over in the corner. Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Can I make a recommendation? Can we move A1 to the top of the meeting prior to public comment? Because we have our two gentlemen here that have traveled a long distance, and I would like for them to be able to do their presentation and then get back on the road.
All right,
Is that okay?
so you'll amend your motion?
Okay, with that, then I'll second.
Okay, and then we actually have a public comment on this item. It looks like David Carey. You could step up to the microphone, thank you.
Thank you, board members, superintendent. My name is David Carey. One of the items that you had on the agenda was an item about discussing the costs of a recent election. And the agenda listed it as being in March of 2020, Measure A. My understanding is that that measure was a measure dealing with Geyserville and raising money for the Geyserville student school district. My understanding is that wasn't the intent of what that agenda was supposed to cover, but since it was not properly agendized, I'll suggest that you take some alternative action, such as deferring that intended agenda item to another meeting so it can be properly noticed under the Brown Act. Thank you very much.
David, can you clarify for us, because we're a little confused. We're not quite sure what measure.
Measure A was our measure that we had on the ballot in March of 2021.
21, if you look at the agenda, I think it says March of 2020.
Thank you for
So
clarifying
thank you for
that.
clarifying. That is a typo.
That's a typo.
That's a typo. It's related to our 2021 election, so
We will correct that.
we will correct that.
I will amend the second then.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right, students? Hi, Dylan. Good
Did we
evening.
approve the agenda?
No. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so
Kelly, can I make a comment? When you do the all in favor ayes at home, it's very confusing for the audience to know if the measure passed or not. This was feedback we got last time. Is there any way to do roll call?
No,
no.
Okay.
it's very laborious.
Huh?
I can say after a motion carries.
Or just so that they can get it at home?
Maybe
Yeah.
motion carries.
Yeah, I can say motion
5-0
carries.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, good idea.
Yeah, we're not required to do that in our in-person meetings for every item, only for specific items that we have to do roll call on. Any questions on that?
No.
All right, so we moved and approved the agenda. Thank you.
So now we will move up to Education Services 1, and then we will do public comment.
Okay, so this is the second public hearing regarding the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system. This is all in advance of the presentation of the draft trustee voting area plans by the district's demographer. And tonight we have the district's demographer, and you have to introduce yourself because I forgot what your name was. And I know that we have a lawyer from 3F, and I know his first name is Milton.
Yes,
And
Milton Foster.
there you go. And they are here tonight to do the presentation.
All right, should we get up and move?
Go ahead.
And I'm Justin Rich with Cooperative Strategies.
Wait, can you hold on 1 second? Because we just have to wait for the stream to catch up with the presentation.
Sure.
Do you guys want to move?
Yeah, I think I'm going to move.
Watch out for this.
Like, I can't see all well.
You don't have to, if you've got it on your pad.
I guess that's true.
They just tell you to
Okay.
have a pad.
I know, my iPad died. I'm charging it.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, board members. As you said, we're here for the second of the pre-map public hearings. Go to the first slide. So we'll just give a brief recap because I know you went through this less than a month ago, as is required. So what is the California Voting Rights Act? Took effect 2003, January, and essentially it prohibits at-large election systems, which is your present system, in the event of certain conditions. Those conditions are stated there if it's found that the at-large election system impairs the ability of a protected class to elect candidates of its choice, or alternatively, the ability to influence the outcome of an election. Go ahead. Importantly, the CVRA is very broad, and it's frankly somewhat easy for a plaintiff to establish a claim against a government entity. One of the main things, and this is the initial question you hear, well, what if we didn't intend for this to result in the results that it resulted in? There was no intent on our part. That's not required under the California Voting Rights Act, which is one of the reasons why it's so easy to establish. Go ahead. Just some heads up about the CVRA. It grants the prevailing plaintiff right to attorney's fees and also expert witness fees, which typically include the demographers on the other side of persons bringing this suit. Notably, the district, in the event that it is successful in defeating a CVRA claim, is not entitled to those same rights. So you can see that the statute was sort of written one-sided. By-trustee election system, one of the most important things about this system, which you all have initiated a transition to, my understanding, I think it was back in February, started the process. One of the main benefits of it is that it gets safe harbor from CVRA claims. And, in general, the way it works is that rather than an at-large election system, which all of the members of the community and the jurisdiction can vote for all of the board members, the main difference is that the by-trustee area election system is broken up. You have 4 or 5 board members broken up into sections, and only the community members that live in that section can vote for those trustees. Go ahead. So right now where we're at the pre-map public hearings. The statutes require that prior to the demographer engaging in drafting proposed maps, that it is required that the board have 2 pre-map public hearings, the first of which was conducted last month, September 14th, I believe, and this is the second. The primary purpose being to take and receive input from the community in advance of the demographer setting to the task of preparing the maps. Okay, so that's the purpose of today's meeting. Go ahead.
Again, I'm Justin Rich with Cooperative Strategies, and I'm the demographer that will be working with you all. As part of this, as Milton brought up, what we're looking for is input on the maps that we draw so that we can take that both from you and from community members so that we can incorporate that into our analysis, into the maps that we will provide to you next time. We look at this from a data perspective, and we look at this from a overall geographic perspective, but your input just regarding the various communities and the communities of interest, our process is benefited by having that input from you all. So I'll just mention that. On this slide, we've provided a couple of things. We have a map that zooms out on the southeastern portion of the district and shows some of the incorporated and also the communities that are served by the district. We've also included a table which you saw last time that has the 2010 census data. It's important to note that when we draw our maps, we now have the benefit of 2020 census data. So we will be incorporating that. This shows the demographic composition of the district and the various protected classes that are listed here. And again, that's information that we will use when we start drawing these maps. Next slide. We've also included a graduated color map. This map shows the largest protected class, the Hispanic Latino population, based on the citizen voting age population estimates. What you'll see is in the darker colors, those are census blocks that comprise the district. The darker colors represent higher concentrations of the Hispanic Latino voters, and the lighter colors show lower concentrations. This information is relevant for us and important when we're looking at whether or not we are impairing the ability of a protected class to elect the candidate of their choice in accordance with the Federal Voting Rights Act. Next slide. So we've included this aerial map. Again, a main purpose of tonight is to get input and feedback. How should we draw these lines? What are some of the various things that we would take into consideration? And I think that we'll talk about some of those considerations, but it's important to know for us, are there natural geographic features? Are there certain communities of interest? What are the types of things that we should take back to our offices and incorporate into the draft maps that we provide to you all?
So the question is always asked, what information should the district be seeking from the community, and what information will be helpful to the demographer? Well, we're outsiders, right? We don't reside here. One of the value that we receive is from the community and from yourself, board members, providing specific information about what would constitute communities of interest in your district. And so as an example, I would like to keep neighborhood X and neighborhood Y in the same trustee area because I believe these are areas that are like-minded or similar communities of interest. That is the type of grassroots feedback that we all need from you in order to make sure that the maps are reflective of what the communities you have presently are. Go ahead. Additional areas of feedback, for example, I think Bodega Highway and all these different highways and creeks, that those should be natural or geographical dividers in terms of breaking up the trustee areas. If they're natural boundaries, or if they're geographical boundaries, these are things that you all would know because you live here and reside here that we would not know. And so it's important for the board to provide that information as well as the community members to the board for your consideration. Next slide. Again, these are just samples of the type of feedback and information. Sometimes community members discuss, the fact that elementary or middle school boundary lines should be in multiple or across single areas, or there's a discussion by the board that each trustee area should serve multiple school sites. Again, each of these are instances where the board would kind of provide that guidance and direction, taking into consideration feedback from the community. The point being to keep communities of interest together where we can. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect because there's necessarily going to have to be dividing lines between the trustee areas, but the focus is to have good and balanced representation across the 5 trustee areas. All right, so after the pre-map public hearings, which is the second one, the next task will be for the demographer to take the information and to create, using the 2020 census data as he outlined to you, create proposed trustee area plans or maps for your review and consideration, and also feedback from the community. The things that need to be looked at is that the population must be equal as is practicable, right? Equal number of people, not necessarily citizens. And then there is a certain amount of deviation amongst the 5 trustee areas that is allowable. The demographer will make sure that that is maintained when he is preparing the proposed trustee area maps. Go ahead.
And so based on the input that we receive, I know that we've already received a couple of comments, and so we'll take that information into account. Those were sent to the district and forwarded to us. There's other criteria that we have to consider as well, and I'll just take a step back for a second. This process of asking for input is sort of an abstract concept, and so what we're trying to do is provide some concrete examples of what kind of information is actionable for us and things that we can put it ultimately into the maps that we draw. There's also these considerations that are the backdrop for this. There's a couple of things that we have to do, and I'll point those out, and then there's some things that we should do, because back to Milton's point, it represents better or balanced representation, and those are things that we would want to achieve. We also want to we want to make sure that we're not dividing communities. Those folks that have a more unified voice, we want to make sure that we can keep them together. So we must comply with the U.S. Constitution, and a couple of things related to that. We have to achieve population balance like Milton discussed. We must also comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. That was shared earlier. The Federal Voting Rights Act focuses on us not impairing the ability of a protected class to elect the candidate of their choice. In this context, a protected class are those racial and language minority groups that are defined by the Federal Voting Rights Act. And so we want to make sure that when we're drawing lines, we're not in some way diminishing the ability of that protected class to, again, have a unified voice. We should have areas that are contiguous and relatively compact. I'll state that that's challenging when you have the district boundaries as it is, and the topography of the region, and the varying degrees of population density. So it's easy to say that, but in practice that will be more challenging. We should also consider the local communities of interest. And what that means is these are groups that have shared social and economic characteristics. It could be based on religion or national origin or other things like that. To the extent that those communities exist here, we want to hear about that and make sure we're not dividing those communities. It's also in the eye of the beholder. A community of interest could be how a certain group identifies together. And again, being from the outside, it's helpful for us to hear that from you all and to hear that from the community so that we have better maps. Lastly, we cannot favor or discriminate against an incumbent or a political candidate or political party.
So we'll summarize with, because oftentimes the question is, you're necessarily dividing the district up. Important to remember that this does not change the district's overall boundaries, doesn't change the school attendance boundaries, and it doesn't change how the district is to be governed. Right? This is solely concerned with how board members are to be elected. Once you get to the board, business as usual, right? Every interest is about maintaining the confidence of the entire district, making decisions that are in the best half of the district as a whole, notwithstanding the fact that you are elected in individual trustee areas. It's just something to remember. And so with that, I think we are through in terms of our presentation. We have a schedule up here that we have, tentative schedule that we've worked out with the administration, that our first post-map public hearing will look to be approximately November 10th, and then subsequently we'll have another public pre-map or post-map public hearing at December 1st, and then finally at December 15th. Again, that's a tentative schedule because it is dependent upon what feedback the board gets and what requests the board has once they see the maps. It's an iterative process. It's not determinative in any nature. The board is able to control the process up until conclusion. Okay.
All right, so we will now convene our public hearing to receive public testimony concerning the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system in advance of the preparation of the draft trustee voting area plans for the district. Demographer. Under California Education Code, Section 10010, the board must hold at least 2 public hearings over a period of no more than 30 days, at which the public is invited to provide input regarding the composition of the districts before drawing maps of the proposed boundaries of the district. As part of this public hearing, members of the public may submit comments on the established voting area boundaries for the new trustee voting areas that will be established as part of the district's transition from an at-large election system to a by-trustee area election system. Speakers will be given a designated time to make comments on this matter and this matter only. And if people would like to make comments on this item, our speaker cards are at the end of the table in the front of the room on the left. Well, my left, your right. And we have received 1 comment card and then have 4 online submissions. And I don't see anyone else getting up, so I think this is all we will have. How much time do we want to go with for these items?
I just think she needs to read what they are.
Okay, and 2 minutes or 3 minutes for the speaker?
Yeah.
3? Okay. It's speaker. I'm like, you know who you are, but I need to announce you. David Carey.
Thank you, board members. My name's David Carey. I support your efforts here to move to by-trustee elections. However, it's also important to realize that by-trustee elections are still a pretty bad way of electing a board of trustees. Among other things, it limits voters' political rights. It limits who they can vote for. It limits whose votes they can combine with to elect somebody that best represents them. It slices and dices voters up into little pieces in order to have single-member elections. And that's not a good way to get representation on the board. As an example, even within a household, something that you can't divide by drawing boundaries, there are people who want different trustees to represent them best. And you can't separate those people so they all get somebody that best represents them with this. It is, however, still, or can be, a big improvement over how elections have been done here in this district. And that's why I support this effort. Amen. It's important to realize that part of the reason for the California Voting Rights Act is to better assure that historically underrepresented groups of people have a better chance of getting fair representation on this board. To help facilitate that, I'm going to suggest a few things. One is that you make a special effort to involve and communicate with your Spanish language communities in the district. That would entail, for example, having concurrent interpretation of these hearings and having that interpretation available in recordings that you make public, for example, on YouTube. All of the material, including the slideshow that we saw tonight, should also be available in Spanish. Really make an effort, a special effort, to reach out to those communities. The other thing is we saw tonight here some things about what kind of input people could provide. And those touched on a few important things, but it doesn't go nearly as deep as best practices allow. You really should enable individuals from the community to draw their own maps and submit those for consideration. That involves making the data available to them and making applications, online applications available where they can draw that maps. That has been done in other jurisdictions and it can be done here now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then, Tony, do you want to read the comments?
I have 4 comments, email comments. The first comment is from Dan Northern, who lives in Forestville. I think it's important that the maps be drawn so that they do not divide existing individual rural communities into separate districts, if at all possible. I think most of the issues, once the maps are presented, will be around where the boundaries fall in the denser populated areas such as the city of Sebastopol, where they are likely to divide neighborhoods. So that's from Dan Northern. The second comment is from Jim Horn. Thank you for taking my comments. My name is Jim Horn. I'm a retired engineer and I've lived within the high school district boundaries for 36 years. My daughter graduated from Anley in 2005. I was a trustee of the Gravenstein Union Elementary District for 17 years. I was also a member of the Palm Drive Healthcare District Board of Directors for 3 years. I have a couple of requests when you create new trustee areas for the high school board. First, depending on demographics, I favor keeping each elementary school feeder district within a single trustee area whenever possible. That could give each feeder district a single representative on the high school board and make it easier to advocate for their own students as they transition to the high school. Second, I favor keeping the Gravenstein and Twin Hills feeder districts together within one high school trustee area if possible. Both districts are contiguous, largely rural, and at the southern end of the high school district. Both draw a significant percentage of their students from neighboring districts outside the high school boundaries, which has helped offset declining enrollment elsewhere in West County. Both have strong interests in maintaining an attractive school environment at the elementary and secondary levels. Thank you, Jim Horn. Comment number 3 is from Debbie Ramirez. Thank you for considering this comment as the public hearing regarding the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system in advance of the preparation of draft trustee voting area plans by the district's demographer. I'm not sure if there will be very much feedback on this important issue tonight because there hasn't been much public notice made of the process and purpose for input. I have been following the county's decennial redistricting process and have some understanding of the feedback required at this stage. I urge you, if there is little feedback tonight, to add one more public hearing prior to prospective maps being drawn and make as really good effort to inform the public about the information sought. These are truly questions that the local residents are best equipped to weigh in on. The county, as well as other jurisdictions, including the Napa Valley Unified School District, have utilized the District R online district mapping system. This system allows the user to draw boundaries that make sense and check them in real time for balanced numbers as required by the process. I have utilized this system to create a rough map outlining 5 districts of equal population of voting age residents. Your demographers could upload the district boundaries to the system to facilitate this process. My draft map, which I will also forward to the demographers in case they are able to share it on screen at the meeting, shows 5 areas. 1, Sebastopol. 2, South Sebastopol. 3, West Sebastopol. 4, River Coast Hills. And 5, Greater Forestville, Grayton. These areas take elementary districts and communities into account. This seems like a good place to start, and I hope there will be an opportunity for much more community input regarding the shaping of districts. Map attached. I think you guys got a copy of that. And then the last one is from Gillian Hayes. This draft map below, using the county redistricting tool, creates 5 districts with equal citizens of voters' age using the 2020 census data. This is my recommendation for voting districts moving forward, as it fairly separates our sub-communities as they relate to individual community identities, as well as provides a balanced distribution of census-aged information in each area. Guerneville and Deeper Russian River communities are similar in nature and should be in the same district. Grayton and surrounding has separate primary school districts and different identity and should also be in its own district. Incorporated City of Sebastopol, clearly its own identity and community and should be in its own district. Unincorporated Sebastopol and Bodega and surrounding areas should be its own district as well. These 5 districts clearly provide separation in communities and identities and census info and represent a fair division of voting districts. This type of tool should have been provided by consultants for the school redistricting process. Disappointing, more options weren't available to the public when brainstorming these areas. Thank you, Gillian Hayes. I think you also have that one as well. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the board?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeannie.
So when I was, you asked us the question here as to, I'm going to find it, how should the lines be drawn? So having been in this district for a very, very long time, like forever, I wanted to just give some of my feedback. And I do concur with what Tony just read, was about Sebastopol city limits. Needs to certainly be taken into consideration, which would include Sebastopol School District. I was even looking at some boundary lines as River Road, one side and the other, or Guerneville Road. I did agree with Jim Horn about the Twin Hills and Gravenstein districts. They're all pretty much southern and west southern area. And then I also like the idea of the Forestville and or Grayton area as a, the harder part is someone mentioned that each elementary district should have its own area. Well, we have 10 feeder districts. That doesn't work. We have to make it 5. So some of those are going to have to be combined, and I'm sure it'll have to be combined based on population. But definitely looking at Guerneville as a hub, and Forestville and Grayton, which is Oak Grove School District, as another hub is certainly a possibility. And those are my ideas, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
Any other comments from the board? I closed the public hearing, yes. All right, any other comments from the board? I just, one comment from me, and I think I mentioned this at the last public hearing, one of the main purposes of this, of doing this type of study is to develop areas where protected classes will have better representation and better voice in decisions that are being made related to themselves. And so I just encourage you to look at how we draw those lines where the protected classes really would have a better voice. And based on that map, I mean, it's a little, you don't have heavily dense, I mean, you have some dense pockets, but maybe not like you would see, say, in like Santa Rosa now, especially now that Roseland is a part of the city of Santa Rosa. So I think that's just a priority for me, is how do we draw those lines to ensure that that's really going to be possible in an area with our kind of very more rural community with people a little bit more spread out.
Definitely a big challenge.
Yeah. Do you have a comment or a response to that?
Well, I just wanted to mention two things. With every map that we draw, there will be a table similar to what you've seen that shows all of the demographic composition of those areas. So you will be able to see that. You'll see, based on both total population and the citizen voting age population, what those various protected classes in each area, what their composition is. So I think that'll be helpful. It'll also be a comparative tool that you'll use to look at one scenario over another. So I think that'll be helpful. And then the second thing I just want to mention is that when we are drawing those areas to be balanced in terms of population, just clarifying, it has to be based on total population, not citizens voting age population, not based on any subset. It's one person, one vote. That's ultimately what we have to use. So just wanted to mention that.
Can I ask you one other question
Sure.
while you're up? You're familiar with these processes, and from what I understand from talking to people about these types of processes, generally when you're doing the public hearing, you might have less people turn out, and then people really turn out and get excited when they have like real maps to look at and kind of start drawing and saying, hey, this doesn't work, this does work. I want to acknowledge some of the comments around community engagement, and I think that that is, it is a little disappointing. This is a big shift for the district, and to not have more people engaged in this conversation. So I'm just wondering, is this something that you experienced in other jurisdictions, or this might be something that our staff needs to kind of look at? I mean, I know obviously we get our information out in our traditional ways, but maybe we need to do more. And I do agree. I mean, I think especially for a topic like this, if we're really talking about trying better engagement of our protected classes, then we should be able to make sure that our protected classes are able to participate around language access. So I think that's something that, obviously you don't need to, but our team, our staff needs to kind of explore how we might be able to do a better job in that area.
And we're accustomed to doing that, helping to get documents translated, bringing in translators when necessary. Those are things that we can help with. Obviously, using the district's resources is preferable, but to the extent that there's additional help that's needed, we can help with that.
Okay.
And then just to your point about the level of engagement, I think, like I mentioned during the presentation, these are very abstract things that we're asking. And so once you have some concrete examples in front of you in terms of a proposed map, I think that's when people can say, this really doesn't work, or this works well. And that's ultimately the dialogue, and hopefully that's what we can get out of this, is to understand that this map works well in this respect, and this map works well in other respects. But here are the shortcomings of those. And ultimately, like Milton mentioned, this is an iterative process, and we will develop multiple maps beyond that point. We fully expect to hear criticisms along the way, and we will fine-tune them accordingly, and then bring them back to you. And ultimately, it's you all that decide. So we have to be able to provide a map that represents your sensibilities.
Thank you for that.
I'll just chime in and say, to your point, the apparent lack of participation, that is normal. That's typical for the subject matter. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I've done numerous of these at this point, and that's just the level of participation just often isn't there. Especially at this stage, it gets a little more inclusive. Oftentimes, the other thing is, certain settings, right? People are, they're not as comfortable in a public hearing setting, so sometimes they will have a community meeting where people can come and, in a much more relaxed setting and come and approach and provide comments or feedback. But in general, just dependent, it's district dependent, but for the most part, you don't see as much of the community being active in these processes. But, we make sure that the district, makes concerted efforts to reach out to the groups and provides the opportunity, which is, what the district's obligation is.
Yeah, I think, just to build upon what you said, I think that you're hitting on something around format.
Yeah.
And I think that might be something that we might consider or explore in some of the additional meetings, that having something that's a little bit more informal. I think we're leading a process in my other hat with the county right now where we're doing ARPA town halls and we're using more of a breakout kind of style format. And I think that just allows for better engagement, especially if we're talking about, people who generally tend to, for many reasons, not to be able to attend a meeting like this and or feel, comfortable speaking up in a meeting like this. So maybe, I don't know what the parameters are of those 3 additional meetings, and if we have flexibility, like do they have to be at a board meeting, or can they be in more of a breakout, a different style format? But maybe we can think about how we might do that a little differently.
Okay. We'll be in touch with the superintendent, talking about those different proposals and options that you might have to execute that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kelly, I have a comment if I can. I'm sitting on the County Committee for School District Organization. I have witnessed this process now, I think 6 times with different school districts. And what we're seeing here is exactly what we saw in those other districts. Very little participation in an event like this, a little bit more as maps were starting to be drawn. But even in that, and because the county committee ultimately approves whatever we approve here, it was interesting that there just is not the level of engagement that you would maybe think. I know I was surprised at first, and we talked with the 3Fs and got that same response back, that it's just unfortunate, but it is the nature of the beast.
All right, any other comments from the board? All right, we will, thank you for being here this evening. We'll see you again soon. Yeah, thank you. All right, so now we'll move back to the beginning of our agenda, which is time for public comment. And do we have public comment this evening? Okay. So members of the public who wish to be heard by the board are asked to complete a speaker card, again, up front to your right. Once recognized by the board president, speakers should come to the podium, introduce yourself for the record before addressing the board. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Groups commenting on the same topic are limited to 15 minutes. With board consent, the board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation comment, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask for that additional person speak only if they have something new to add. The board will not comment on items unless they are agendized. However, the board reserves the right to clarify or correct any misinformation stated. Each individual speaker may only address the board one time per unagendized or agendized items. As per board laws, during agendized items, the board president reserves the right to ask any speaker to stay on the current agendized topic. Once warned and the speaker continues off topic, the board president reserves the right to ask them to be seated or to have their microphone muted. And it looks like we have one speaker, so Carmen.
For the short people in the world. I'm talking tonight on behalf of the West County Bandwagon, which is the music boosters that supports our music program at West County High. I'm here to announce that we're excited to let everyone know that the West County After School Strings program is starting at Forestville School and Academy. This is a new joint project between our district here, the Bandwagon, and Forestville Elementary. West County High Band Director Casey Jones is the director of the program, and there's a separate instructor that does the actual string instruction. It's really neat. There's an opportunity for kids to learn to play the violin, the viola, the cello, and there's no cost to the student or the family. Many of the instruments that are going to be used are from our West County music program, and it's open to any middle school student that attends Forestville School. And we have big plans to try to expand to the other middle schools with funding and personnel being the limiting factor at this point. But that's our big announcement for today. This program's just starting. I'm very excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. All right, and I don't believe we have any other comment. We didn't have any email?
We do. We have
Okay, we did have emails. Okay.
We have 3 email comments on non-agenda items. The first one, my name is Barbara Delano. I live in Forestville. I am commenting to protest the closing of El Molino High School and the consolidation of El Molino and Annalee High Schools. I feel that we need both high schools for many reasons for our communities, because of traffic concerns and for the convenience of students and busy parents. But the reason that seems most critical is climate change. This year has been truly catastrophic, with fires, droughts, floods, and hurricanes all over the world. I feel that consideration of climate change should stop the consolidation now. Having all of the students in the El Molino district go to Sebastopol makes hundreds of students go miles out of their way every day for school. It adds up to thousands of extra miles traveled. And it's not just this year, it's every year. Another strategy to lighten your footprint on the earth is to use things you already have. We already have El Molino. It distresses me to see this campus go practically unused. You may have thought COVID would be over by now, but it isn't. We used to have the luxury of a lot of space, but you closed our school. When my kids went to El Molino, it didn't have a state-of-the-art track, stands for watching games, and lights for night games. I was glad to see the students there now had these things, but you closed our school. Please reconsider consolidation because of everything, community opposition, etc., but especially because of climate change. We must consider the consequences for our actions in this severe situation. Okay, the next public comment. This is a letter from a parent of a West County High School student submitted by Michelle Ramos. What is critical race theory? According to an article on the Hillsdale College website by Christopher F. Rufo, quote, critical race theory is an academic discipline formulated in the 1990s, built on the intellectual framework of identity-based Marxism. Regulated for many years to universities and obscure academic journals, over the past decade, it has increasingly become the default ideology in our public institutions. It has been injected into government agencies, public school systems, teacher training programs, and corporate human resource departments in the form of diversity training programs, human resource modules, public policy frameworks, and school curricula. There are a series of euphemisms deployed by its supporters to describe critical race theory, including equity, social justice, diversity and inclusion, and culturally responsive teaching. Critical race theory promotes three ideas: race essentialism, collective guilt, and neo-segregation, which violate the basic principles of equity and justice, end quote. Another euphemism for critical race theory is ethnic studies. Last week, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 101, requiring ethnic studies, aka critical race theory, to be taught in our schools and to be a requirement for graduation. Ethnic studies may sound beneficial, but in reality, is it going to foster and teach our children racism, segregation, discrimination, and inappropriate guilt? Is this bill opening the door for toxic and controversial curriculum in our schools? Please explore the potential risks and implications of critical race theory and ethnic studies in our schools and in our communities. Let us remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous quote, "I look to a day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Let us teach our children to have quality of character." Okay. Then there's one more public comment. It says, here are my comments. These comments were actually for a previous board meeting, but we were not able to read them, so they're being read now. It says, I, Gillian Hayes, as a tax-paying community member and a parent, would like the board to know that I will not stop until Jeannie Fernandez steps down from her position on the board. Over 3,200 voters signed a petition during COVID that they did not want you to represent them. This is a very large number of opposition. I sure don't see that many people coming out in support of you. Yep, only one person at the last board meeting praised you. The majority is displeased with your lies and disregard for students. Listen to the majority and step down now. The lack of planning this board majority and superintendent have provided is astounding to me. No updated safety plan, lunch service issues, no transition plan on rebranding efforts, parking issues, lockdowns, not enough bathrooms, busing students back and forth during precious instruction time, student fights on campus, CTE class dropouts because of all the transportation issues. Need I go on? We had none of these problems at El Molino. You rushed this consolidation process, and despite your lack of recognition that things have not been smooth, our students are the ones feeling it because of your lack of planning. Jeannie, Kelly, and Tony. We won't stop until you take responsibility and do what's right. Provide all of our students with what they need, a safe and equal education, or step down. And that's it.
Okay. We will move on to consent calendar, and I believe that there's an item that you want to pull on here, Tony, to address. What is item?
Yeah, I wanted to pull number 3 on the consent calendar and discuss it separately.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve consent calendar items 1, 2, and 4 through 6?
I move that we approve the consent calendar minus number 3.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments from the board on that? And is there any public comment on Consent?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so on the item of consideration approval of contracts, what I wanted to point out is that there was one change in one of the contracts that was made today when we noticed that there was a mistake. The previous contract with Herff Jones that was in the original packet said that it was a multi-year contract, and the total on the contract, I believe, was $58,000. In talking to the representative from Herff Jones this morning, it was meant to be a one-year contract, not a multi-year contract, because the total cost is $53,891 per year. So we could not approve a multi-year contract at that amount because it would go over the contract limit and would need to go out to bid. So we made that change in the contract this morning and then included it in the packet. But other than that, no other changes were made to this attachment in this packet. There was one other clarification I did want to make. It does name the Sonoma County Office of Education here with a cost of $37,500. That is actually an MOU where the Sonoma County Office of Education will pay us $37,500 versus us paying them. And that is, they are sponsoring our work with leadership and design. So there will be no cost to the district for our work with leadership and design. The MOU with SCO covers that cost completely. So prior to voting on that, I wanted you to know those changes.
Can I get a motion on that item?
I move that we approve that.
And second?
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? And we still don't have any public comment. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. And now for action items, action on items heard in closed session.
I'm going to make a motion to uphold the findings for case number 1 and 2.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions from the board? All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. Now moving on to our reports for the evening. Dylan?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay.
I don't think it's on, Dylan.
I don't think it's on.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Things at school have been looking better since my last report on September 14. On September 28th, the first Welcome Wesco session took place during advisory. What is Welcome Wesco? Welcome Wesco is like El Molino's easing into Elmo and Annalise Tiger transition. During this session, the leadership class divided into groups and led various small freshman groups into activities and discussion circles. In these discussion circles, upperclassmen got to share tips regarding high school experience, and freshmen got to provide input on their experience so far this year. What all the leadership leaders noticed was that freshmen did not like the amount of homework they were getting, the number of students at the school, and the lunch lines. I'd also like to share that in order to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, La Raza Unida Club members, with the help of the school librarian, Ms. McClelland, decorated the display case in the library with Hispanic books and art. I know that La Raza Unida is also planning on decorating that same display case in the library for Day of the Death, which is October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd. Apart from this, we started off the month of October with Club Day. Club Day was organized by the leadership class and offered the student body an opportunity to explore all available clubs at West County High. We have about 37 clubs, all run by students. During Club Day, almost the entire student body showed up at the field to explore their choices, where they were able to sign up for clubs and buy snacks from different clubs that were fundraising that day. That same day, the leadership class held the first movie night of the year on the main quad. About 330 students showed up, and the first 100 students who got there got a free burrito. On October 6th, the West County's choir had their first concert of the year at the West County Theater. The concert was successful, and we had a great student and parent turnout. In other news, students are still unhappy regarding the break lunch lines. Some students have shared that during break, the line to get breakfast is so long that sometimes you can't get breakfast before the bell rings. However, students have shared that the lunch lines have gotten more efficient and faster lately, and most students are able to get a lunch 15 minutes before the bell rings. Finally, seniors have been facing obstacles when filling out their college and financial aid applications. Students who were proactive and decided to start their college applications as soon as they opened have found themselves going back and having trouble with the high school information they entered. Personally, I entered the information of 2 different high schools: El Molino's information and classes for my first 3 years of high school, and then West County High for senior year. Thinking I was ahead, I was informed at school that I had to declare in my applications that I had attended West County all 4 years. This caused confusion among parents and students. I then had to go back and change all the information I had entered regarding my grades and my high school, which was a tedious process. The same happened with my FAFSA application. This is not something only I got to experience. Many seniors have shared that they also had to do this. Leah Woody, the college counselor at West County High, sent out emails last weekend informing the community of how to handle this issue. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to association reports. Lily, do you have a report?
Brian does.
Brian? Okay. I couldn't even see. It's funny, I couldn't see him.
Hello, my name's Brian Miller. I'm the bargaining chair for the West Sonoma County Teachers Association, and I'm also a math teacher at West County High. And I had a really good day today too, teaching, so I'll just throw that out there. It's been really fun being back, so it was great. And I didn't dress up for all of you either. This is what I wore to school. Not that I wouldn't have dressed up for you, but I didn't. So I'm doing the report today because of the sunshine letter to open up negotiations for the 22-23 school year. And the association thought it would be important for me to just kind of introduce what's going on, what our perspective is, briefly at least, and ask for your support in our goals because we believe them to be mutual. One of our goals that you'll see is we're planning to be assertive in our call for significant salary increase because prioritizing teachers in the budget is the number one way to make sure that you can recruit and retain quality educators. And our assertiveness comes from the fact that the problems are quite urgent. Number one is a teacher shortage. COVID has caused a lot of problems in attracting workers for a variety of different industries. But teaching's unique because we already had that problem before COVID. In California, back in 2003, there were 80,000 people in teacher preparation programs. And then in 2016, the last year we have data, there was 20,000. Those are both approximate numbers, but a massive decrease, and that was prior to COVID. And so what we're seeing locally here, as well as statewide, are significant challenges in hiring teachers. And so prioritizing teachers in the budget is going to have to be a priority. Because the shortages are demonstrratable and they're persistent, and so they need to be addressed. Partly is a challenge for us in this district is we are still quite significantly behind the state average. And so when we talk about being assertive, one of the things we're saying is that it's okay or it's legitimate to demand an average salary. That is not something we need to be ashamed about as we go into negotiations and demand to get significantly closer to the state average. The high cost of living, the current Bay Area Consumer Price Index is really close to 4%, meaning that would be the raise we would need just to break even if we were at the average. We know Santa Rosa a few years ago was rated as the 5th least affordable city for educators in the entire country, and we are in basically the same spot. And so it's just getting difficult. It's getting difficult because although I had actually a wonderful day today, and all my days have been really good actually teaching, the workload has intensified. There's no way around COVID making the workday more challenging for teachers. And it just takes a lot more time to try to meet students where they are, and where they are is in such varied positions. And so I think that additional workload should be valued as well. A recent study actually showed that 55% of educators responded that their workload was unmanageable. And then I think all that is on top of those challenges, are on top of a record state budget. And so then it's really hard to face all of those challenges and face a record state budget. It's a record state budget for one-time money, but it's also a record state budget for year-over-year ongoing money. It's a record state budget for special education money. We know special education funding increased nearly 15%. We know that pension relief has continued, and so that also needs to be taken into consideration, that the state is providing enormous amount of money, and because it takes people to teach people, a proportion of that money just by definition needs to go to your teachers. And I think for now that's all I think I want to say. There's several other articles we opened, but I think today is just to focus in on wages. So thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't see anyone to speak. For the classified, is there anyone? No? Okay. Anybody classified? Okay. We'll move to our principal report. Shauna, do you want to go first?
Good evening, everybody. And unlike Brian, I did dress up for you. It's all for you, okay? So we had a really big month, and I have to say that I agree with Dylan completely that we're seeing some changes and just our policies and procedures kind of getting in gear, and that's really gratifying to see. We have now officially started our advisory tutorial periods, and our advisory tutorial time allows all students a chance to get extra help and expand their learning. The class period occurs every Tuesday and Thursday from 10:20 to 10:53 and provides students with the flexibility to meet with teachers, take tests that they may have missed, ask for help, get help with homework, or even talk about other things with their teachers if that's how they choose to spend their time. They can even go and get help on job applications and college applications, depending on who they want to sign up to go see. During advisory tutorial, all students are required to be in a classroom or other designated space. I won't get into that. So your students can request to see any teacher that they choose to see, and they have up until 11 p.m. the night before to make that request. So it's a really innovative program that we have, and I think it's working very well. Last week we had senior night. We had a virtual senior night that our counselors and college and career coordinator, I believe we have a selection of them right here. They helped lead this, and it was a very successful night. We had it covered a lot of information, from some of the basics of, graduation, cap and gown, the sorts of things that we kind of know right now, but we don't have everything down, of course, because it's only October. And they went over college applications and financial aid and that type of thing. So it was a really good night. Our Safe School Ambassadors is up and running again, and there was a training that Anita Sanduina and Brooke Bell trained with 21 students from the campus. These are the students who are being trained to kind of see, hear, and intervene in things that they see on campus that may not be okay. Things that people are saying that are not kind, or that they are just, the sort of comments that they should jump in and say, hey, that wasn't nice, and that wasn't fair, and that wasn't accurate. And they're being trained about how to do that, and I think it's really amazing. And they're also being trained to recognize when things are at a level where they should just get a teacher and or an administrator to help deal with a situation. So I think that that's fabulous, and I'm really excited to see how their work comes together. We have Homecoming Spirit Week next week. We have dress-up days, so if you see a whole bunch of us in pajamas on Monday, that would be why. And Tuesday is Jersey Day. Wednesday is Country versus Country Club Day. Thursday is Colored Dance Day. And then Friday is Insane School Colors. So it's everything red and blue. And then Friday night is the game, and the dance is Saturday night, and we're having our dance here in the gym, and it's a larger space with a courtyard and things like that. So we're very excited about that. We had our first student council meeting, and that I spoke with Mike Rohn earlier today, and he said it was a great first meeting of student council. 86 student representatives and leadership students met in the auditorium. The executive board relayed information to the student reps about the leadership class and what they have already accomplished this year, and gave them kind of a clue into what it is that they want to be doing during the year. So it's really nice to get all of this participation again, because boy, did we miss this during distance learning. And like Dylan said earlier, we had club day, and I counted the clubs. I think we're now up to like 38 clubs. I got the most recent one and I was counting. I just want to share with you some of the clubs, because the types of variety that we see, I think, really mirrors the types of students that we have. And I think it's really, really exciting. We have a nature exploration, AAPI, which is Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. We have band activities, book club, climate action, cornhole, storytellers, culinary, dance, drama, esports, feminist, gardening, global citizens, interact, journalism, La Raza Unida, lacrosse, women's lacrosse, media production club, mental health club, mountain bike club, the period club, ping pong, speech and debate, tag, viola, West County FFA, backpacking, baking, Black Student Union, chess club, Christian club, CSF, Dungeons and Dragons, parkour, and sailing. The only one that concerns me is the parkour. I don't know if you've ever seen, but that could get interesting on campus, and we'll have to make sure that they are not parkouring their way around school. We had a choir concert, and the theme that Andy Del Monte kind of built the concert around was called Finding Light, and he wrote on the program, he said, for me, my students bring light to my life each day. I hope tonight's concert helps us all find a little more light in our lives. And I have to say, I just thought that was so beautifully said, and after a performance, he would offer some more quotes and things like that, and it was really just a great night, and I think that his hope to bring light, it did. It was really wonderful. Last night, we had an Ag Supporters event, so we were all invited to go to Stemple Creek Ranch for amazing food, and there was a lot of different partnerships with local farmers, and there was a lot of cheese, apparently. I wasn't able to go, but there was a lot of cheese, raspberries, and oysters. I don't know if those go together or not, but I really want to thank our amazing trio of ag teachers, Emily, Heidi, and Emma. We had a safety assembly after our last board meeting. I mentioned that we would be planning a safety assembly, and we had it, and I thought it was very successful. We covered policies and procedures around lockdowns, fire, earthquake responses. Additionally, we covered social media, pros and cons, where we touched on some of the TikTok challenges that we were concerned about. And we also talked about rumors and the rumor mill and that type of thing. We had Chief Kilgore from Sebastopol PD, Chief Braga from the fire department, a fire engineer who came with him, Rosanna Fikes, Matt Shubin, and our vice principals. Everybody got up and kind of did their part. And I thought it was a really nice way for us to finish off what we started with, the lockdowns and all of that, and to kind of get everybody together and get everybody on the same page. And last but not least, we had our PD day. So Monday was a professional development day on our site. We had a speaker by the name of Jeff Eben. He is a nationally recognized educator and author. He tells an amazing story about his own life and how he was able to use the hardships and kind of some of the tragedy of his own life experience to become someone who really, really focuses on the wins and the positivity. And I thought that the message was incredibly well done. I appreciated it, and I believe I've heard many people on the staff also appreciated the speaker. After the speaker, our departments met together and to start the work. Some of them had already started, some it's easy, some it's a little bit more complicated of figuring out what is going to be offered next year for our classes. It sounds like we're really early, but we're not that early because we do it pretty early. So they're starting to have those conversations. And as a consolidated school, those are pretty meaty conversations. So they're starting those, and the goal is to have their sequence of classes delineated and also rewriting the course catalog in order to kind of bring in what both schools had been doing. So we're going to be working on that as well. We are also at the very beginning stages of discussing whether or not we want to do a senior project, and if we do, what would it look like? How would it be different than what had been before? What new things could we do? And there's been no decision on that so far. And, I lied, I do have one more comment. Once a month, I'm going to be hosting a community chat. I'm trying to come up with a cool name. I clearly have not yet. The community chat time is going to be on the 19th in the library from 9 to 10 a.m. And I'm there for anyone who wants to come and talk to me. And we can talk about school. Let's talk all things school, and it can be our families or just members from the community. All they need to do is check in at the office and then walk on over to the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Ali.
Hello, Hello, board, and welcome. We love being here on the Forestville campus, and we're honored that you guys are holding the meeting here tonight. I do want to apologize for Peyton. Peyton couldn't come tonight. She actually works 2 jobs. She waitresses at 2 different places down in Guerneville, so she couldn't be here, but she wanted to send her regards. I want to take a second and thank each and every board member who has come to the Laguna campus over the course of the last few weeks and spending time with us. We feel seen and we feel acknowledged when you come to visit us, and we really just want to say how much we appreciate that. I also want to highlight some of the things we have happening on campus. First of all, our Statistics for Life class, which you guys approved last year. We're wrapping up our first quarter unit. That's called Where Are You Going? And so for this, and just a quick recap, in this class, kids are learning all the data analysis they need in order to be successful in life. And it's kind of our approach to teaching kids math skills and data analysis skills. And as part of this, they have to figure out where they're going in their lives. They have to figure out their life trajectory. So we use Naviance, and then the kids do the career interest survey. And then we have used that for the kids to be able to research what it is they want to do, what type of education they need to get there, how much money they will need in order to get that education. And then as part of it, which we were super stoked about, we worked with our work-based learning coordinator. And so our work-based learning coordinator matched every single one of our students with an industry professional, including Mr. Nagel, our trustee over there. And the kids got to actually interview the grown-ups, which was really awesome because our kids got to feel seen and they got to feel heard, and they got to have the experience of having a really positive, open, and transparent relationship with a grown-up that they wouldn't necessarily have gotten otherwise. It was a really transformative project for the kids and for our campus community. And we're just really proud of all the work that Stacy Fortin is doing and Sue Taggart, and for all of our industry professionals who came out and worked with our kids. Our kids love that, and thank you. We also, same teacher, but Sue Taggart, we did our SRJC articulated classes, which is Adobe Photoshop and web development. And as of today, we got all of our kids as enrolled students at SRJC. So again, if we're looking at things that we know for kids who are at risk, having access to early college credit helps kids who are at risk of not graduating from high school have better post-secondary outcomes. And we are so stoked and we're so proud and so thankful of SRJC for coming out here and helping all of our kids get enrolled. And for Sue Taggart for learning how to teach the class so she could teach the class, and the kids are way ahead of where she is, and she will openly and readily admit that. So also for post-secondary outcomes, we started our FAFSA month. So it's October, and October is the big FAFSA month. Last year, we had an 8% completion rate of FAFSA, and FAFSA is one of the strongest indicators of post-secondary success. And so this year, we're partnering with 10,000 Degrees. This was part of our CSI plan that you guys approved last year, that we have 10,000 Degrees as people here on campus as part of our campus culture and community, and that they work with every single kid and every single family to make sure that every single kid has access to the money they need in order to go to whatever they want to after high school. So we are hoping for 100% completion. We'll settle for like 70 or 80, but 100% completion for FAFSA rate is one of our goals as a site. We are dedicated to removing those financial barriers, and we know that finances are a barrier for our kids. We are also participating in the Rooster Fellowship. So if you guys don't know what that is, and Tony is participating as part of our group, it's a group that uses data analytics to ask the kids 4 questions every single day. Questions are, what their statements, what I am learning matters to me. I feel comfortable being myself at school. My school thinks I can succeed, and that I get the help I need at school. So the kids are asked those 4 questions every day, and they rate how they feel about those questions every single day, so that we can try things and test things and get instantaneous feedback about how the kids feel, how we are doing as the grown-ups. And a big, huge thank you to Bruce Myers, who kind of volunteered to be like our guinea pig. So it's in his class. So every single day the kids come in, they take the survey, and we get a sense of how they feel about school. So I'll tell you guys more about that as we get more data on that. Also, a huge thank you to the Annalee Alumni Association, because they have been a huge support of our student closet, and I know, again, that is a big thanks to Patrick, who connected us with them. But now we have such a huge amount of clothing for our kids, and if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, we have a closet on campus, and actually Andrew has donated clothes. Actually, lots of you guys have donated clothes. Our kids love going in there. It's set up like a shop. Patty Stack from Kiwanis has come out. She got a whole bunch of furniture donated, so it's like a little living room, and the kids come in and they can go shopping and they can grab what they need, and it's just super cool. So we are so thankful for all of the support and all the help with that. Also, kind of cool new thing, we are teaching our kids how to play guitar. Hallie in our sustainable living class has hired a guitar teacher. And the guitar teacher comes every single Wednesday, and any kid who wants to learn how to play the guitar, it's free. We bought a bunch of guitars. The kids can take guitar lessons, and the kids are totally excited. Like, they're all like carrying their guitars around campus, and they're taking them home, and they're playing all over campus, and it's just super cool to see that. Their goal is actually to have a performance in the PAC, so hopefully someday we can use the PAC and we can have the kids up there and perform for the rest of our student body. As part of that class also, this is part of what, it's like an 80-20 project, which is what Google came up with, where 80% of the time they work on the projects for Google, 20% of the time they work on like some sort of development of their own idea. So as part of that, the kids are gardening, they're learning to crochet, they're learning to knit, they're learning to embroider, and this is all part of that sustainable living class where we're teaching kids life skills and finding passions for them to follow for the rest of their lives. On October 11th, we had the awesome opportunity to work with a social emotional learning coach that was provided through a SCO grant to help support us work with our homeless population. So she teaches us breathing strategies and mindfulness strategies so that we as staff can share with our students like our own, so that we can be centered and we can have self-regulation, so that we can teach our kids self-regulation. And then we also had the honor to meet with Matt Sokoloff, who was actually a former student of Sue Taggart, and I believe actually of Tony's at one point too. And he just happened to be the author of the book we were reading on practicing mindfulness, and so Sue found him. He lives in Mexico, and he actually had a meeting with us, and it was phenomenal to hear from his perspective as a kid who had a troubled past and how he overcame that, and that mindfulness and breathing and all of these things that we're trying to teach our kids and how that helped him on his journey. I want to take a second and thank Shauna, because for our Laguna kids, they were invited to homecoming, and our kids are so excited. They also, big huge thanks to Karen Lamb, because one of our students, who I won't say her name because she would embarrass her, but is very, very tiny. She's about 4'11", and Karen Lamb gave us a bunch of dresses. And like to see this kid who wouldn't normally have gotten access to something that's so cool, like homecoming, and like to have her parade through the office in these beautiful clothes, it's so cool and it's so awesome. And again, if we're looking at transformational things, like allowing our kids to have access to homecoming is awesome. And it's not something that we can provide for them because we're too small, but I feel so humbled that we are allowed to be participating in it with West County, so thank you. Last thing, I just want to take a second to thank every single staff member and teacher on our staff. I've never worked with a more loving and dedicated staff. They show up and they're present for kids in every single day in every single way possible. We have food everywhere in every single nook and cranny, so like we stuff them and we give them clothes and we give them love and we give them everything that we hope that they take with them for the rest of their life. So I just want to say thank you to all of them. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Now, for board member reports. Patrick.
All right. Well, since I've my long tenure here, since I was appointed, I've been kind of busy. On 9/27, I met with Allie, and she walked me around the campus here. We walked into the sustainable living class. We met with the lady from 10,000 Lights, right? Is that right? 10,000 Degrees, sorry. We went there. And we talked about needs and whatnot. I really appreciated her time for doing that. I did have the opportunity to tour the closet and the pantry. And I was a little concerned about how it was looking at that time, and I promised Kim that I would do my best to improve the environment there. It was also brought to my attention the needs for a washer and dryer here on campus and the ability and access to showers. After talking to Superintendent Beal and Tony and Jenny, we were able to make those things happen, and so that's great. And also, as Ali mentioned, I was able to get in touch with the Alumni Association, and they really took the bull by the horns. In fact, they're planning a clothing drive on 10/24, and if anybody has anything, they can drop it off at the Sebastopol Community Center. Really want to personally thank Ms. Loretta for kind of spearheading that, and Lori J. for stepping up and really kind of taking that bull by the horns. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me personally. To give kids the access to the things that they need to be successful. Something as simple as clothes and a little bit of food don't seem like a lot to help people get better, but we need to provide that. I personally arranged for a couple pallets of food, snacks to be delivered here to the school. I've been told that everyone's enjoying that. That's just the beginning for me. I've actually reached out to a couple of vendor partners, Allie. There'll be more to come on that, but we're gonna I have some commitments to have some conversations, and we're gonna take care of the pantry and get it kind of more robust and full on a regular basis. I'm really proud of our community because I think it really shows that we have all these wonderful support groups, associations that they really want to help. They're invested in helping. Sometimes they just don't know how to help, or they don't know where the help is needed. So by pointing out and giving them the opportunity and watching them go and filling and stuff already coming in, it really makes me proud. So I really appreciate those things. Let's see, on 10/5, I met with Shauna Fernandson and all three of the vice principals on the West County campus. We had a really good conversation about kind of where we are, some ideas about needs to get where we're going and kind of what that looks like. I really enjoyed their time. And I really appreciated their time. And one of the things that I took away from that conversation is we're spending an inordinate amount of energy and time on a couple of issues, and we're really neglecting all the wonderful and great things that are happening on campus. They get kind of overshadowed by the negative sometimes, and my commitment is to really kind of shine a light on all the good things that we're doing and not, obviously addressing the issues as they come up and getting those handled, but also giving that same oxygen to all the wonderful things that everybody is doing on campus, because there are a lot of wonderful things. Later that day, as Ali mentioned, I came here and got the opportunity to participate in that program with Stacy Fortin and Sue Taggart, and I really appreciate their time. It was really a fun time to sit and listen, to have a one-on-one conversation with the student and have her really pick my brain about a lot of different things. And it was interesting that we started on one topic and we got into some pretty deep life stuff, so it was kind of fun. I also spent some time with Peyton that day, and I really enjoyed that. That day ended for me meeting with a group of community members here in Forestville, kind of expressing some of their concerns about my appointment. They represented the Deep West County, and we had a good and I thought productive conversation. Let's see, on 10/8, I had the opportunity to attend the football game and work in the snack bar, and Carmen put me to work and made me bag 60 bags of popcorn and carry water from the snack bar to the band. By the way, the cases of water are heavy when you're walking that far. But it was really an interesting thing for me. I admittedly have never spent a lot of time with the band. So it was very fascinating for me to, give them a little snack. But the bigger thing was to kind of watch them in action as they're performing at the event, and how they were kind of working, and they actually had play calls and stuff to play the right music. So that was kind of interesting for me as someone who's never actually been down that far. So I really enjoyed my time there, and I really appreciate Carmen kind of setting that up for me, and also Casey, kind of explaining to me kind of what they were doing and how it was working. He didn't have to take the time; he was busy, in his pink suit. So, but he did wear a pink suit, yes. it was pink night, and he was wearing a pink suit. So I really appreciated that. Again, thank you to everyone who helped me do that. And then today, I was invited, and I got to come talk to the leadership class with Dylan here. And they had a whole bunch of things to tell me and a whole bunch of things to ask me. But the big takeaway was I was really impressed with the investment into where we are and where we're going, and not necessarily just, accepting where things are. They had great opinions, and they had the opportunity to really say that. And I felt really honored to spend a couple minutes with them today, and I thank Mike Rohn for inviting me. Other than that, I've been working hard on studying the budget, understanding what we're doing, understanding where we're at, and all the things that come next. So that's my report.
I have nowhere near as much to report. Unfortunately, I've been caring for a sick family member, but I've had the pleasure of sneaking into a few of the sports activities, and students are working hard. It's cool to see their progress and see them work together. I'd like to also give my commendation to the band. I had friends that were in band in school, but being there front and center and watching them play is really awesome. And then we even had people that were sitting in front of us that were trying to watch the band, and so seeing that there's this whole crowd here for the band supporting was really cool and awesome. That it just brings out such a good crowd. The band adds such an awesome energy to the football game, so it was cool to see that and kind of see that different perspective. Other than that, I've just been brushing up when I can on the CSBA, all the new assembly bills being passed and mandates, and keep myself well informed that way.
Well, tomorrow I'm looking forward to my second visit to Laguna here, and I get to see the kids in action and visit some classes while the kids are in session. This will be my second visit. The first one I got to meet and talk with a lot of the staff members. So I'm really looking forward to visiting some classes and seeing what the kids are doing. And I'm with Angie, just a lot of reading on all the new things coming out, but that's it.
So I wanted to give an update to the board and to our community regarding the County Committee on School District Organization. We have a meeting tomorrow night, so I kind of got a little heads up about an update that pertains to our school district that I wanted to share with the board and with the committee, with the community, excuse me. I know you all know that we had requested about 2 years ago now to do a unification study with regards to all 11 school districts, including our school district. And we put that forward to the SCO, to the county, and asked for them to do that. They agreed to do that. The county committee voted on that to approve that. I actually am not a voting member on that topic because it's a conflict of interest. But anyway, the committee did vote to move forward with the the unification study. So that was last January, we approved the moving forward with the unification study. And we've heard nothing, and we've heard nothing, and we've heard nothing, and we've heard nothing. So finally, at our last meeting, I asked if there was any updates. I was told there was no updates. I thought that was interesting. So I dug a little deeper, and I found out that, in fact, they were accepting RFPs for the contract to do this study. The last date was supposed to be October 3rd. So I don't know where we quite stand. I might know a little bit more tomorrow night. But I thought it would be most interesting to let everyone know that the study has not yet been started. So Kelly, you're vindicated. Because Kelly said it was going to take 3 years. And it might actually take that long from the time we asked for it. More to be revealed as we move forward, but I just thought it would be fair for us and for the community to know where we stand on that. The other thing that I just wanted to make a comment about and ask a huge favor of you, Shauna, if you wouldn't mind, is we heard tonight that there was a choir concert. I don't think any of us on this board heard about it. So I would really like, because I am a huge supporter of our arts, and I think we all are, and we would love to be able to attend, but if we don't know it's happening, we can't be there. And I really believe that our conductors and our theater folks would really love our support. So if you could let them know, or if you could let us know, or somebody let us know when those things are happening, that would be really awesome. So thank you. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Maybe even in TGIF, I know we used to get the little print calendars, and I know we want to save trees, but that was always helpful to me have it in writing. I know my daughter loves to go to especially the choir concerts. She just absolutely loves to watch them. Well, I just had just a great visit at Laguna. Thank you again for showing me around campus and walking into a lot of the classrooms, and got to sit through the council, yes, which was a great experience to sit through and just be with the students. And if any of the board members would like to participate in that process, it was a great experience to be there and hear their comments and engage it that way. So thank you again, and I look forward to continuing my connections on campus. And thank you, Jeannie, for sharing that information. I think, I know we can't have like a discussion, but it is disappointing to know that that hasn't yet even moved out of the RFP process and gotten a consultant on board. So thank you for sharing that information tonight.
You're welcome.
And Tony.
Okay, I have a couple items. First, I have a letter from Lusa Panetti. Dear committee members, thank you so much for awarding me the $420 Dorothy Arnold Scholarship. It will be an enormous help in covering my expenses at Seattle University. Also, please excuse the delay in sending this letter. I was working all summer at a remote summer camp without computer access. So that was nice. We have two letters from SCO. The first is a letter officially, it says, after a comprehensive review, it's been determined that your district's 2021 LCAP meets all the required criteria. So our LCAP has been approved by SCO. And our budget has also been approved. It says the county office has concluded the district has met the necessary requirements and therefore approves the district's budget as adopted. It does say that the county commends the district for their work towards fiscal stability. The county's review of the district's 21-22 adopted budget noted the fiscal recovery plan submitted with the 2023 third interim report has been incorporated into the multi-year projections. The county continues to support the district's fiscal recovery process and urges the district to continue identifying areas where fiscal stability can be enhanced while using due diligence in the implementation of the reductions recently incorporated into the MYP. We urge the district to continue to review and monitor revenues, expenditures, and fund balances of all funds. So good news from SCO. And then I had one additional item. There's been questions at past board meetings about the bridge implementation rebranding costs. Jenny, I think you have a slide. And I've given board members a paper copy of this, and this will be available for members of the public.
We need to wait until they get the slide and the feed goes to the.
Got it.
How long does it take to wake up?
It can take a bit. Did you turn it off, or did you just?
It went off on its own.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Is it warm enough?
No.
Try to get the power up one more time.
So as I was saying, this will be available to the public. We will post it on the website and then also have it available if anyone would like it emailed. They just need to let us know that they'd like a copy. So we're still waiting to put my glasses on for this.
Here, it's up on
It is up on the feed at home?
Is everyone here
They
okay?
are doing the feed at home, I'm doing the feed here, it's coming up.
Is everyone okay if she starts and reads the numbers and it comes up in a second?
It should be, here it comes.
Okay, there we go. That's really small though.
It is really small.
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
So it's smaller.
Wait, why don't we just start
Yeah.
going
So there are several columns here. The first column is the amount that has currently been spent. The second column is what's been encumbered. And then the third column here is the total of those two. That's still really small. Of those two totals. It lists, the list has all of the sports and activity uniforms in the top section and how much we have either spent or encumbered for each of those. Practice jerseys for football, helmet decals, football jerseys, men's basketball, women's basketball, cross country, dance uniforms, cheer uniforms, and band uniforms and accessories. There's also close to $37,000 that has still been, it's been allocated for sports uniforms for winter and spring that has not yet been spent. So that's in that top budget column. There was questions in previous board meetings about band uniform and accessories, I'm sorry. There's $6,000 that has either been encumbered or spent currently, but there's a remaining budget of close to $9,000. There was a total of $15,000 set aside for band uniforms. So there is still some money set aside in this budget to cover additional expenses for band. What I want to make note of is that the amount that you see at the very bottom, the grand total, very bottom left, that amount, close to $172,000, was the original set aside when we had those original conversations about consolidation, and we were going to set aside money for the rebranding involved in consolidation, so that we had set aside $172,000 for the whole entire rebranding process. When we thought, remember at the very beginning, our conversations were that we were going to rebrand, that amount of money was set aside for that. Then what's happened since that time, since we paused and then used the bridge name, is we have utilized $86,000. You can see that in the third column at the bottom. We have spent $86,406.10 on the bridge rebranding. Now that includes the $37,000 that's set aside for spring and winter sports. So there's $86,000 that has been spent of that $172,000 total that had been set aside for the total rebranding. Does that make sense? So you can also see that after we have spent the $86,406.10, that there still is an additional set aside that remains of $66,833.53 that could be used for other sports or for permanent uniforms, if that is the desire of the board as we move forward. So this was the cost as of September 22nd. At this point, we've had more of the funds that have been encumbered, I think, have been spent. So that's the only change that's happened since that time. There has been no other additional expenditures from this set-aside budget. I don't know if you have any questions. Like I said, this will be available for the public. We can email it to anyone who'd like. We can post it on our website. And we will update it if we have additional expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, now we will move on to our discussion and action items for the evening. First, well, we heard our first item, so we'll move on to our second item, report on enrollment and inter-district transfers for fall 2021-22 school year.
So this is a routine item that we always bring in September, October of every year. And you'll see from the various reports that are attached to this item, there was a summary in the cover for this, that our enrollment is actually slightly higher than we had projected it would be in our ADA projections for the multi-year projections. So for the multi-year projections, we had predicted enrollment to be 1589, and our enrollment in the district on Seabed's Day, which was, I want to say October the 6th, it was Wednesday last week, was 1649. So, so it puts us in a little better spot in terms of our budget than we had anticipated. It should be noted, too, that when we did those projections, we were following the advice of SCO, Sonoma County Office of Education, in terms of a declining enrollment and what they had anticipated for COVID. So that part is good news. As a reminder, our whole county, actually our whole state, is in declining enrollment. And Andrew and I have been attending a workshop put on by School Services of California where they're talking about declining enrollment. And Sonoma County is the third highest county in declining enrollment in the state.
Wow.
And they said it was 16.9%, I believe it was. So our county, yeah, our whole county is in declining enrollment as well as our whole state. And the other part of this report is on inter-district transfers. As you look at the data, our inter-district transfers declined this year by about 30 students, and it continues a decline from previous years. Each year, our inter-district transfer numbers are getting slightly less, which does make sense. If there's less students in the county, there would be less students coming to all districts. There were, the increase in the interdistrict transfers is due to an increase in the number of students who would have attended El Molino, as we had predicted, actually, that there would be more students from that would have attended El Molino that would have transferred out of our district. There were 34 students total compared to 9 in the 2021 school year. So there were an increase of 25 students who would have attended El Molino who requested to leave the district. There were less students coming in from other areas, and then there were also more students from the El Molino area that left. Does that make sense? Then the other area that we look at is private schools, charters, and out of county or state. So anyone that goes from us to another public school in the area has to fill out an inter-district, so that's how we track them. If you're going to a private school or charters or out of the county or state, they don't have to fill any forms out, they do a request. And so we track those numbers by when they request the records for the student when they attend another school. So we had 67 students withdrew from our district at the end of the 21-22 school year. Let's see, to attend either of those, private school, charter, or out of the county or the state, as compared to 75 in 1920 or 87 in 1819. So it was actually a little less, which was surprising to me in that direction. So I don't know if you have any questions on the data at all.
Is this an action? No, this is
It is
just a
not, it's
report.
just a report.
Any questions from the board? Do we have any public comment on this?
I do have one.
Okay. Any questions from the board? All right, David.
Thank you, board members. My name is David Carey. Can you hear me? This mic is on? Okay. I had some questions about some of these enrollment figures, and the superintendent's explanations of them, I think, covered most of the questions I had. Part of my questions were motivated by the fact, as I looked at some of the numbers about transfers out, that there's at least one case that I know of personally that didn't seem to be accounted in those reports. And so, but the superintendent's explanation kind of explained why that can happen. And it also raised for me the concern that maybe some of the numbers that you're seeing have some systemic undercounts. And that may be something that's important in terms of how you deal with declining enrollments in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other comments or questions from the board? I just want to thank the district staff and Karen. I know you put a lot of time into this report every year, sleuthing and trying to figure out where the students have gone, especially the ones that don't necessarily stay in our county. So just thanks, because I know that way back when I first came onto the board, we didn't track this data, and it was something that I really wanted us to start tracking, because I think it does help us with our future planning and thinking about just where we might go in the future. And I'm very shocked to hear that we're the third highest in the state of declining enrollment. That is just really astounding and a very critical data point, because I think, you know, we talk about this a lot, just housing prices, you know, why families can't stay in our county. And this is a bigger issue than I think we think about. And so it's just really profound to me in this moment to know that it's that we're that high. So thank you for bringing forward that piece of data, because I think that's something that we should just have in our forefront and talk about, because that is very concerning.
Is this report available for the public?
This is on, so what Tony said with the data, it's in the board items. So if you go on the website, that you can see that information in the board item. As far as the report that you got, that data point with the third highest, I don't know.
It's in this report for school services. We could probably make that.
Okay, we'll make it available in this board item. So, you know, maybe not tomorrow morning, because they'll have to go back and make that happen, but check back and we can make it available. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to our next item, which is consideration of approval of update to the district COVID safety plan. And
Do not need to
we don't have any
consideration of
updates,
approval.
so this isn't.
There is
okay.
an update, but there isn't a change in the condition. So,
Okay. So we
yeah,
don't have to take an action.
you don't need to do
Okay.
action. The good news is that we've not had any new cases since our last board meeting. So
Wow, congratulations.
no new COVID cases since our last board meeting. So that's amazing news. There have been no new regulations that have come from the Sonoma County Public Health Department. So no new cases, no new regulations, and we have 92% of our staff is vaccinated. And we are currently testing unvaccinated staff or any symptomatic staff or students. We are also testing them. So, so very good news. The only new news, I think, probably not to you guys, you probably know this news, that the governor has, talked about mandating vaccines for students. At this point, that is all on hold. He issued that edict, I guess. That sounds mandate, that's a better word. He issued that mandate, but there hasn't been any follow-up to that of how that would be enforced or what the rules would be. So we're in a holding pattern at this point, waiting for that. But thankfully, we've had no new cases, so no reason to update our safety plan.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? And do we have any comment from the public?
3, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think I need I don't have my glasses. Okay. So this is a letter from a parent of a West County High School student submitted by Michelle Ramos. Children are being forced to stay masked for hours on end in order to be able to attend school in person. Can you please provide to parents and to the public the science documenting the necessity and safety of masking our children and the studies that are being used to justify the COVID mitigation measures in our schools? There are dozens of studies on PubMed.gov proving the ineffectiveness of face masks. More and more scientific evidence is mounting that COVID-19 protocols are causing extreme emotional, psychological, and physical harm, particularly in children. Can you please show the scientific evidence that demonstrates that the benefits of these unprecedented COVID mitigation measures outweigh the harms? Is the COVID funding that our school district and state are receiving dictating the COVID mitigation measures and the compliance in our schools? How much COVID funding has our school district received? Where is an accounting of the COVID money and how is it being spent? Return our schools to normal, no masks, no distancing, no contact tracing, no testing, no mandatory COVID vaccinations. Return to regular education and extracurricular activities. We need to stand for health freedom. We need truth for health. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Any other public comment? Well, again, just want to echo thanks to staff because that's a big accomplishment. And I know it takes a lot of time and effort to put together all the protocols of everything you're doing to keep the kids healthy on campus. And I would just like to say as a parent, I appreciate it. And I know my youngest daughter is in one of those classes where it just seems like there's kids that are getting it. But I think the protocols and putting masks and everything that we're doing is so critical because she has not gotten COVID. So it's not spreading on campus. So just thank you to everyone for all you're doing to keep our community healthy.
Can I make a comment? I would just like to make a comment that we as a school board and we as a school district, we are only following the law. We are only following what we are mandated to do. And so for someone to be upset because we're doing these things, I would like to say, please reach out to the Public Health Department and/or please reach out to the governor's office. Coming to us doesn't do a whole lot because our hands are tied behind our back. We have to follow what we are told to do. So if there's a concern or an issue there, please talk to the right people.
Any other comments? All right, so discussion and action on location for November 10th, 2021 board meeting. So this is an action item, but I feel like we have to have the discussion first before we can have a motion because I'm not sure what anyone, unless someone.
I'm not sure we need a motion right now.
Not yet.
Yeah, I mean, unless someone, exactly. So
Right.
we'll move straight to the discussion.
Yes. So the reason why this was on the agenda is to have two phases of conversation. One is the governor also extended the ability for boards to have virtual meetings. And in order to have a virtual meeting, you need to be able to establish that an emergency still exists and that you need to have a virtual meeting. I think we are one of the few boards that are actually meeting in person. Most other school boards in the county are still virtual and intend to stay virtual for a long time, at least in my conversations with them. But we seem to be doing okay here in person. So I think one thing was to have the conversation about, do we want to stay in person? And then the second was about logistics of how do we continue to do this? Because in all honesty, setting up a meeting like this and streaming it not only takes a lot of staff time, it actually costs us money because we're having to get specialty equipment to make it work in different areas. So I think we wanted to have, that conversation. It would be easier for staff if we were to choose one location, and that would be the location where we had those board meetings, because then the equipment could stay there for broadcasting versus moving it back and forth. And Jenny can speak to how much time it took to set this up. Here, our original goal was to have it in the PAC, but we found out that was going to be an extraordinary amount of money to make it work in that area, which is why we're here today. So I'm going to let Jenny talk about the realities.
I think you guys have heard me talk a little bit about the challenges that we faced in trying to just figure out how to stream it and have it live in person. We are not a television studio, but we are operating as if we are one, and it is taking our technology staff and also the help of Steve Porter up there, you can wave, who is our volunteer resident AV expert, and he is currently being paid for all of his time that he spends assisting us getting board meetings ready as well as participating in the board meetings. For it to be here tonight, it took us an entire week to get this ready. We started off working in the Performing Arts Center, found that we are missing a few key components to our networking system, which we would have had to do anyway. So we're in the process of procuring those items and getting those installed. That is just a product of the fact that we have been in distance learning and haven't really used that facility at all, that we found those things out. So we quickly transitioned over to the library, which provides a level of unique challenges. You can see over to your guys' left, my right, that we've got multiple computers streaming the YouTube feed, watching. Another computer is doing the presentation so that the viewers at home can see what everyone here can see, as well as they're listening to the feed to make sure that they can hear us on the microphones, and you can see all the patch cables here. It takes a lot of time. This board meeting in particular probably cost us about $1,800 to put on with staff overtime and just setting up and breaking down. What we would really like to see is one location. I know it's probably not the most ideal location because the theater is big, is at the West County Theater. We've had 3 successful board meetings there. We've gotten it down to maybe 2.5 hours of setup now with custodial staff setting up the stage, and then our staff, our IT staff setting up the boards. The key component, and I'm going to speak at a very high level, is we have to pipe the sound in directly to a computer so that they can hear it at home. That's not really easy to do in libraries. This particular library happens to have over in that closet, if you look behind you, some level of sound system that we're plugging into here. We do not have that at the West County Library. So we're hoping that we can have one location just so that we can get our system down pat. I realize that traditionally we have gone back and forth between both campuses, but we are able to stream online. It is successful. We do have people participating in that, so it is opening up that avenue. Of course, we will bend over backwards to make whatever the board decides happen. But we are an IT staff of 3. And when we take a week to do this, that means that's a week of us not answering technology tickets for students and staff. And it really puts us behind being able to do what our primary charge is to help our staff and students throughout the course of their day. So I'm happy to try to answer any additional questions. Just looking for a little bit of insight on what your thoughts are for future board meetings. Thank you.
Do we know how many people are watching online tonight?
Jay, can you tell us how many people are watching concurrently?
At the moment, 37. It's gone up and down over the course of the evening. You said 37? At this moment.
Total of 37 people. It fluctuates throughout the night. I watch it too. Our first meeting, we had about 56 people there that were not board members, staff, or student representatives. The second board meeting, it was about 11, and I haven't counted behind me, but I can tell you that the small contingency of people in the corner are here as presenters.
My comment is this, I mean, obviously, attendance is dependent on the agenda, right? I mean, the items that are on the agenda are what drive attendance. And many of the community really wanted in person to get back to in-person meetings when we talk about, big topics. So I want to be aware of that, and I want to be open to that, but I also, I mean, if we have 4 or 5 non-presenters in the crowd and 4 or 5 times as many people watching online, does it make sense to spend $1,800 in hours of time for 4 people to come in person? And my answer would be no. I want to be open to that, but at the same time, logistically speaking, if people aren't actually going to come, then why are we going through all that to do that?
I would just say that, I mean, when we were online or virtual, we seem to have a lot more engagement. I mean, I'm open to whichever as well. I don't know, can we seek input, before we make the decision, like from the community or from, school families to, incorporate that information into our decision? Since that was kind of what drove us to go back to in person.
Can I also make a comment? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I just was wondering, what's the cost difference between in-person and virtual?
Virtual, there is no cost, and in person, right now, this meeting was pretty expensive just because we hadn't held it here. Our first meeting for the entire show probably cost us about $4,000 because we had to buy the camera over there to produce the live feed, and it was a lot of staff time figuring out how to make it work. Since then, we've gotten it down to probably a couple $100 to do it in the theater. There is staff overtime associated, so my staff is, their day ends at 4, so if they are over there listening, they're on overtime. And the one comment that I wanted to make relative to inclusivity, so far we have not been able to figure out how to translate in person and stream that online. When we were virtual, we were able to do translation at every board meeting. Yes. That is something that is a significant challenge here for in-person as well as streaming it virtually, and then trying to translate all of our board meetings. I mean, some of our board meetings are hours and hours, so we haven't quite determined how to do that yet. It's on our radar, but we just haven't gotten there.
Go ahead.
So my comment would be, number one, I would like to hear from maybe a couple of these folks, whether or not they would be participating online if they weren't here tonight, number one. Number two, I concur, if we're having to incur costs for all of this overtime and for setting this up, and we are not getting the participation that we thought we might, and it has, and we all know it's just been, waning and waning to now tonight, four different people. I'm not sure that that's a cost benefit that gives us the benefit to be meeting in person. And I am really concerned about the Spanish translation. We are not able to do that, and I understand that's a real challenge here, and we were able to provide that while we were online. So my thought would be, like Patrick said, that I'm not in favor of continuing with these in-person meetings if in fact it's going to cost us a lot of money and we're not going to see the people coming to our meetings. I think people are concerned about COVID, to be frankly honest, and they don't want to be in a public setting. So I would like to hear from any of these people that might like to tell us.
I'd also like to clarify and re-answer the question, how much does it cost us when we're in virtual? When we are in virtual, we do have translation services. Depending on how long the meeting goes, it can be anywhere from $200 to $450. But that's not associated with staff time per se. Your mic is off.
So does anyone here, we would love to hear, and sorry I had my mic off that whole time, so I apologize for that. We would love to hear from people who are at the meeting what the impacts might be of going virtual, and we will ask you to fill out a comment card.
Just quickly. Yeah.
Just quickly, so that we can follow our processes.
What's your thought?
You know, I mean, I'm torn on it, honestly. Like, I feel like we got a lot of feedback that it was really critical and important to go back to in-person. I agree with you, Patrick. I think some of those, the important times are when we have some of the items that might be bigger items, which we haven't had. I mean, I guess we have had, I don't know. I feel like every meeting feels a little big right now. But, so I hesitate, and I also feel like, I mean, it is hard to, right now, we're just not set up in our capacity to translate our meetings, which has, that's been a frustration I have voiced, and I get where we're at with that piece. And then also just feeling like it is a big cost. So I don't know. I'm very torn because I don't want to alienate people. I think this was great that we did do a meeting tonight here at El Molino, because I was thinking just that maybe because we're meeting in Sebastopol, it's harder for people out in, Guerneville or the more rural parts of West County to come and attend the meeting. And I don't know.
That didn't matter.
Maybe that you could comment on that. Like, if you are one of those people and this made it you able to attend the meeting, I would love to know that. So let's start with Barbara. You're first on my list.
Hi, it's been nice to see you, and being online is very distant and I really can't see you very well. But then the cost, if we're going into big costs to have this, it doesn't seem like it's worth it. Like you're saying, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about combining the two schools, that was a hot topic. Everybody wanted to talk about that. Now that it seems like that's not being discussed, and other things are, it seems like virtual could be okay. I mean, it's a lot more engaging to see you all in person than it is to see you as little figures on my screen. And I tend to start yawning and walk off and do other stuff. So this has been really a lot more engaging, but I don't know if it's worth the cost.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you. And David?
You've got a big sample of two here, but I would be happy to do and to make comments at either form of meeting. So it doesn't make that much of a difference to me. I will say that I'm set up at home with a computer and internet service, so watching this from home is something I've done in the past. I get along well with it. We know from distance learning that there are a lot of people who don't. And particularly here, as maybe in the next few meetings, you're trying to encourage some input and participation from groups of people that maybe don't usually participate. Normally, I would say that's a reason to stick with in-person meetings. But if translation services are an issue, that's a pretty strong indication that maybe, there's another side there that counterbalances that. So that's the input I have, I think.
Thank you. That is helpful. I do want to acknowledge that we do have some pretty intense broadband issues in the West County, which is a limitation. And having, for the last year and a half, worked in a position where in my day paid job, where I have to facilitate a lot of groups and do engaging work, it can be done online. It's not impossible to do. It's different, yes, and not impossible. So, but the broadband issues are a real thing in the West County. Thoughts?
So my comment or my question would be, Tony, it states from the County Office of Education or from the Health Department or state or whomever said that we have to show a reason why we can't meet in person. And so if other districts aren't, what's their reason?
Well, there's still, the county office has still, the regulations are that to be in person, you're supposed to be 6 feet apart and everyone's supposed to wear masks. So.
And we don't even have a shield.
Right. So according to the Sonoma County Public Health, these meetings are not recommended. We are doing these meetings under, extra precautions in order to have them in person. So those regulations have not changed.
I just had a question. And that's why we're doing the vaccination and testing requirement, right? Because it does, sorry, Angie.
No, I was just going to kind of talk about that. I don't know what the district testing turnaround time is, but most of the places when we've had to get a COVID test, you can't even get it turned around in time to have the 3-day. So to me, like the hindrance of that limiting community engagement and not having the translation services kind of seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot harder I have 5 children, so being at home is a lot more challenging. I've got to lock people out, but, I'm trying to weigh, I do, or threaten lives. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So I just think that, being able to have the engagement and the input that we're used to. I'm new to in-person meetings, so I don't know historically what the attendance looked like. I mean, obviously, it's a lot like, the hot topic issue.
This is pretty consistent, except, yeah.
It is pretty consistent.
I want to piggyback on what Angie just said too, is that in the Zoom setting, it was a lot more interactive because as topics could pop up, people could then maybe put in a comment or raise their hand on a topic. When we're simulcasting through YouTube, they have no ability. So the only ability to actually give any input is to actually be here in person. So, I mean, I love all of you for coming, but we're only hearing from a couple people when there's a lot of more people that are invested in it. And I know that during Zoom, I mean, on some of those topics, and yes, they were more exciting, we north of 500 at times. And that's a lot more engagement than here, and we really need to hear that engagement. And I guess if I was going to make a suggestion, as we think about these, if we were to go to virtual meetings for standardized meetings and maybe reserve the right to combine the two topics, we reserve the right to utilize the theater for a topic that we anticipate will be largely attended. We could then make that transition and have that available. But I think Angie's onto something there. Is we're not really getting a good piece of the community's feedback in this existing setting.
That's true. Dylan, do you have anything to add from the student perspective? Not to put you on the spot, but yeah, how would you feel? What are your thoughts? Yeah, you've done a lot of virtual in the last year and a half, and now you're doing in person, so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with Angie and Mr. Nagel. I think doing online board meetings allows the community to provide more input in terms of everything they want to talk about. Because I know that for most of the community, sometimes it's really hard to, drive to the West County campus or this campus, and it's more, it's more, I don't know how to pronounce the word, accessible to have online board meetings. So yeah.
Thank you.
That's it.
So would anyone, this is an action item, so we do have to take an action on this. It sounds like it just does anyone want to entertain making a potential motion?
Can I just say?
Yeah.
I really like the idea Patrick had of, online for most cases, but when we're anticipating a large, hot topic, so to speak, that we have the option to doing that in person. I really like the kind of hybrid.
And how would we
model.
determine, or what criteria would we use for a hot topic?
I was going to ask that.
I know, I'm like, how would we determine that? Because I, as president, don't want to get reamed like, well, that, you should have known, Kelly, that would be a hot topic.
I don't know, I think personally, I think that ends up going towards the agenda setting team, kind of looking at the agenda saying, this we anticipate some real noise about. That would be my thought.
Patrick?
I don't think it's any secret, the topics that generate the most discussion, all we'd have to do is look at the emails that are received on the topics, and it's pretty evident what they are. I mean, so I would think that we could anticipate that in advance and know that some topics are going to be more community interest in them than normal. And I just, and I think also that's where we could actually listen to the community. If enough community really if the community understands that in normal course of business, it's going to be Zoom meetings for now. And if there's a topic that's really, really important to them, all they have to do is email somebody or contact someone and say, hey, we really think this is a topic that we would like to do in person, then we can make that accommodation. But I think those are pretty easily to figure out what they are.
My only reservation with that is I feel like consistency is important because people have crazy busy lives, and trying to keep track of who and where and what everybody's doing, adding something else, I just worry that it just makes things more complicated. It's kind of like dealing with the location situation. I think if it's consistent and then people just have to know the dates, and keeping it simplified just creates more sanity for everyone and more cooperation versus friction or irritation.
Yeah, I was thinking the same two things. So I wanted to understand, Tony, based on the criteria that we have to justify that the reason why we're having virtual meetings is because there's a verified, health concern. Mm-hmm. So if we're waffling back and forth, does that potentially make it seem like, well, it's not really a health concern, because why would it be a health concern for one meeting but not the health concern for the next meeting? And then I have similar concerns too, Angie. I just know, albeit our stuff board agenda, right on the front page now, and it's still, people are just busy and it's hard to find things. And I know even probably myself, I would be like, oh wait, are we virtual tonight or are we in person? Exactly. Where do I have to be? And I think that we might lose people and people might get frustrated. I came to the, yeah, you might lose me. But it'll be people will go to the library. Well, I went to the library for your meeting and then it wasn't there and then I had to go home. It could lead to frustration. So can you talk about the first question and then my other, which is more of a comment?
We have to have a meeting every 30 days in order to make the decision to continue to be virtual if you go virtual.
So basically every month. Yeah. So next month we would have our meeting virtual, and then we would have to have a discussion to say,
that
okay,
meeting,
the following month.
to say the following one's going to be virtual. You have to do it within 30 days of the next meeting.
Don't we have to do it every 30 days anyway? Yeah. So we have
It's every 30 days. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was thinking of is that we had more people participating when we were virtual. It was much more convenient for people to participate, to log in and say something, raise their hand and come on and speak. If there's a hot topic, you're going to get more people virtually than you will get in person.
Yeah. I mean, I would just like to say, I think because we have to have the protocols around testing and vaccination status, I do think that's a limiting factor because, you know, I hope most people are vaccinated, and we know not everyone is vaccinated. And to your point, Angie, the testing, I mean, I've had to get my daughter tested a bunch too, and it's like 4 days later you get it. So it's kind of impossible to have that 72-hour test to be able to attend.
We can also offer the rapid test. So we could offer the rapid test at the door. We do have rapid tests.
That's again,
So if people weren't vaccinated and didn't have, weren't able to do the 3 days, we could offer the rapid test as a way for people to get into the meeting.
which is again more, so I don't know. I know we've had a lot of discussion. How does anyone, we do need to take an action on this. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I will. I will like to move that we move to virtual meetings, and every 30 days we will revisit that as directed by the mandate from the state.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Angie. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Any questions or comments from the board on that? Go ahead, Barbara. Do you want to, I'll use your speaker card. Yeah, we have
I
your
just
speaker.
wanted to say, could you please post the accurate time and date on the website? Because I've been having trouble with that.
Okay.
Checking the website. Tonight, the meeting, it said it was in the library, but which library?
It's in Forest.
And it didn't say Forestville.
Oh,
I had to check too.
I called the school to
Okay.
find out. And then last meeting, it said the meeting was Wednesday, September 14th, and that doesn't exist. It was Tuesday, September 14th, the meeting. So anyway, the accurate information on the website would help.
Right here.
Thank you.
Just so you know, I just want to point it out. Board meeting, Forestville.
I didn't see.
So,
Yeah,
you
it's,
can
I
click
know.
on the
See, this
link.
is why it's too hard to have multiple
Yeah,
different.
I agree. I agree. If it's going to be virtual, then it's.
Our sample size is small, but yet very, very impactful. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Student vote? Thank you. All right, motion carries 5-0 with a student vote for it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I want to give a huge thanks to Steve and our tech staff for doing what you have been doing. We really, really do appreciate it. And we know these are extra long hours for all of you too, so thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right. Discussion out, no, we did that, okay. Consideration of approval of the ESSR 3 expenditure plan.
Yes, so the federal government has given districts funds that are called Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, and hence ESSER, 3 funds. There is a plan that is included in your packet, which is a very detailed plan, which has similar requirements to our LCAP plan of community engagement and following identified needs. So we utilized our LCAP plan and our Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan, which you had already previously approved, to develop this plan. What this will do, the summary of the plans, the summary of the planned expenditures that are listed in this plan are under 3 different categories. One is strategies for continuous and safe in-person learning, and you can see in the plan that there is a COVID safety custodian, because we need to provide additional cleaning based on COVID, And then we are also going to, what's the word I want? Put in a lunch shelter so that students will have a covered area to line up for lunch and then also to have lunch, because there isn't enough covered area right now. And the COVID regulations require that the kids are farther apart and not as many inside. So those were the two areas that we were wanting to spend money on in that category. Then you'll also see that there's another category of addressing the impact of lost instructional time. There's a requirement of a certain percentage of our budget that needs to be spent in this area, and we are using these funds to provide additional independent study teachers, paraeducators, and then also provide class size reduction for both our math and English classes. Some of these things were provided with our ELO funds for this year, and so we're able to use the ESSER 3 funds to do that, to continue these services into next year. You can also see that the list of any remaining funds. This has funds allocated for the continuation of an advisory period for next year, a wellness class, the work-based learning coach, district-wide professional development day, mental health counseling services, continuation of our truancy program, and then there's a allocation for indirect costs for administration of all of those programs. All of these expenditures, like I said previously, follow our LCAP plan and included all of the community engagement we did in the development of our LCAP plan. I don't know if you have any questions. There are no public comments on this item.
No public comments. And we need an action item. This is an action item, so we actually need a motion.
I move that we approve the ESSER 3 expenditure plan.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Comments? And we didn't have any public comment. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And student? Thank you. Motion carries 5-0 and a student positive vote as well. Now we'll move on to our first reading of recommended revisions from CSBA September 2021 updates for policies and administrative regulations.
This is a routine item. Every quarter we get updates from CSBA for board policies based on updates to education code or law. And this is the current batch, I guess you say, of updates based on the current laws. And you can see the listing there of the policies. This is a first reading, and usually past practice for the board is this comes back for a second reading as a consent agenda item on the next agenda.
I would like to move that we approve the CSBA updates for policies.
This isn't an action.
Oh,
item,
excuse
the
me,
first reading.
you're right. She just said that. Duh.
All good.
I appreciate your enthusiasm for moving us along. And does anyone have?
From having to put it on another.
I was. Any questions or comments about the policies or administrative regulations? Did we have any public comment on this item? All right, then yes, if you could bring that back on consent, that would be great.
Yes, please.
Business services. So now moving to Andrew. Welcome. A consideration of approval of monthly budget update for 21-22.
All right, well, good evening, President Noe, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Bill. As a monthly routine item, we bring you the budget revisions that have happened in the prior month. This month is a additional of with the finishing of the unaudited actuals for fiscal year 21. We also have the June 2021 budget revisions that show what finalized the budget for last year. And then the September 21 budget revisions have been put in as well, that as we finalize getting staffing set up, getting the people in the positions and seeing the actuals that are happening, we're able to actualize that budget for staffing. So that's what you see a lot of the budget revisions for September. And this is all work that moves towards the first interim that will come to on December 15th. So it's that building up to that interim reporting period. So we bring this to you for your monthly consideration and approval.
Okay, thank you. And I need a motion for this item.
I move that we approve the monthly budget update for 2021-22.
And a second.
I second.
Thank you, Angie. All right, any questions about the budget update? And we had no public comment? No. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Student? Dylan? Thank you. That motion carries 5-0 with a student vote as well.
Oh, I stole it.
Oh, he's still, I know. Can we get him his
She
mic?
stole his mic.
All right, so now we're going to move on to the next item. Thank you, Elise, for being so patient. I know you've been waiting for this item. Report on costs related to March 2020 parcel tax measure A.
So I was going to go ahead and introduce this item. So as you know, on March 4th of 2020, the Board of Trustees approved a resolution ordering an election. At that time, there had been some conversations about getting some help from the county on the cost of that measure. And we've been going back and forth with communication. And I think we want to, I think Elise wants to talk about where they are, and I know you have some additional information.
Yeah, and I know, Elise, you're here to answer any questions if the board has questions. So Elise is one of the district field representatives for Supervisor Hopkins, and I was able to, Supervisor Hopkins reached out to me as the chair to kind of talk about some of the challenges that had come up around getting the funds from the initial grant application for the community grants, I don't know what you call it, the community grants program, is it okay to call it that? The community grants program that each district has oversight over those funds. And so we were able to have a discussion yesterday. Their office is still very much interested in being able to support our district in being able to recoup some of those dollars. Of course, we can't write a grant for that because it was in the past, but Supervisor Hopkins encouraged us to put forth an application of $25,000 to $30,000 for this year and next year. To cover the cost of a particular class within the school district. So basically, we would be able to recoup some of those dollars by paying for a current cost, which then would free up those funds to use for something that maybe we had earmarked those previous funds to be able to be used for. And I know that this item too was just twofold. I think one part of this item, I'm leading with this conversation just because I want to say that, you know, we had this conversation, but I think the other part of this item was just to sort of provide some education about the costs that does go into having a district election, because they're not free. And, you know, this is a cost that we often take on. And fortunately, historically, we've 9 times out of 10 have always been successful. So that cost obviously had a pretty big benefit. You know, unfortunately, this time we were not, but we just felt as a leadership team, it would be good for the other board members to know the costs, and then obviously to kind of touch base on these funds. So that's where we're at. Elise is here to provide any, if people have questions about, basically we have the application, we need to fill out the application. Tony's working to kind of identify, I was able to talk to Tony yesterday after I had this conversation. Tony's working to identify, you know, what courses we might collectively put together to do that with. And it's kind of an example. I mean, I don't, you know, we used to use the funds that we got from the production company for the movie that was filmed at Annalee. We used to use those funds to pay for our video class for multiple years. So it's kind of setting up a similar relationship where it would just be funding to be able to provide for some courses. So that's where that is.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and I just want to thank Elise for being here. And I also want to thank Supervisor Hopkins for having the conversation with you, Kelly, so that we could, you know, maybe kind of get to the bottom of this and hopefully be able to recoup some of those costs for the election. Because normally when you have an election and it passes for a parcel tax, you can use parcel tax funds to pay that fee. When you don't pass the parcel tax, you're now obligated with general fund dollars to pay for that, which was one of my fears when we originally voted not to put a parcel tax on the ballot, was because of the cost it was going to possibly cost us. And then Supervisor Hopkins said she would be more than happy to help cover some of those costs. So I'm really glad that we're going to bring this to fruition. So thank you. Thank you, Elise.
I just had a quick question. I'm a little bit confused. We're looking at getting funding to help cover like a class. It's not something that we should get anyways. Like, we're kind of backtracking on recouping costs that was promised, and like I'm just confused. Well, I mean, I guess we could apply for more money. So I guess like that's the thing is, so we had designated a certain amount of money to cover that election. And so now we're trying to figure out a pathway forward where we can still bring in those resources. And yes, I mean, we could just at any point in time apply for a grant from the county, and we could ask for more money on top of that. But this is kind of a space where we could even out what we had in those initial discussions. So we've expended the resource, so we can't apply for that exact thing. So we're trying to figure out a way to still be able to bring in those resources for something that would be fundable by their community grants program.
Does that make sense, or do you want me to work a little bit on explaining how the grants program works? I just want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and help explain the county financing system. I know you guys have a lot of rules around your financing systems, and we do too. The funds that this comes from, the community investment grant, we get a certain amount of money each year that gets to be spent. While the budget measure happened, there was quite a long time between that and when we actually got the bill. Am I remembering it was like March? So it was something like 7-8 months after the event itself. And in that time, we were spending that account down. So we received the bill or the information about how much that was at the end of our, annual sort of fund, and it had gone down quite a bit. Then July 1, we have our fiscal year start, and we start with a new year, at which time we can start a new process and we get more money. However, even though July 1 is the start of the new year, our accounting people take time to reconcile last fiscal year and all that sort of stuff. So actually, our fund balance, it's hard to write. Our fund balance was actually given to us just last week. So it's like, so here we are in October, but the rules around the community funded grants also say that the project has to happen in the same fiscal year as the money. And so here we have this problem. We want to give you some money, but we can't do it in that exact way. So Supervisor Hopkins' workout around with Kelly was to fund you in a different way so that you can have the funds on something that's happening currently and then backfill the account that went to the measure. So it's a little bit convoluted, but that's why we're doing it that way.
No, that makes sense. I just remember us being like incentivized by Supervisor Hopkins promising to help provide that. So the fact that the district is having to kind of do the grunt work to make that happen now is just that's kind of where it doesn't really make sense.
We actually made that proposal about a year ago, and so it's been going back and forth for a while. We're doing some grunt work as well.
Yeah. I think it's just, I feel like having the perspective, I feel like I've brought up my day job like so much today. I just have my day job on my mind, but our processes, and I just want to iterate that around the accounting piece, around the fiscal years, it becomes really difficult for us to be able to take in grants at times, roll over funds for the next year. So it is just an unfortunate, frustrating process that, in knowing how that works, can end up in these situations where you can't work over 2 fiscal years. And so this is sort of, and I don't want to use the word creative and sound like we're doing something wrong, just.
No, and
it's
the
a-
other crazy thing was that we didn't even know how much it was going to cost.
We didn't know.
Right, we didn't know the cost of it.
The
Well, we had a
cost
ballpark. I think
until
we had
they
a
billed
ballpark.
us. Until they billed us, we didn't know.
Yeah.
We didn't know until they built it.
We had a ballpark, though. I think, that was part of the incentive in going forward with it.
It was, that's why I voted yes.
Well, I think we have a pathway forward. I mean, I know that there's been challenges on both sides, and I feel like, we have a way to recoup some of these costs, and I know it's not as exactly how it maybe was thought out at the beginning, and I know that the commitment is still there to try to figure out how to get us these resources.
So I do have a question. So you said that the funds need to be spent in the year that they're given. So, because I'm going to write the grant. I write a grant for a couple classes that's going to total close to $30,000. And then the suggestion is to do, so I would need to write the grant 2 years in a row, is basically what you're saying. Because it would be $30,000 for this year and then $30,000 for next year?
Was the amount?
So,
I thought
yeah,
that the.
so
uh,
I said how
30,000.
yeah, so she said that 2 years, so I think yes, you would, because it'll be the same thing next year, like they'll get their new pot of money,
Got it.
and then you would have to reapply next year with the application.
Because $30,000 is about the max you can ask for in the community grant.
Most community grants are significantly smaller than that, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the, I thought that the Measure A total was 40,000, is
It
that?
was 117.
117.
So I think the idea was it was kind of like
Maybe
matching.
the original budget was expected was 40,000. There was something in my mind about that, so 117.
Yeah, I think
wow.
what we discussed was it would be sort of like a matching grant.
Right.
Like, so that is about, 25 to 30 each year would be about, we'd each be putting 50%, so you would be matching what the district contributed, basically.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's the way it would go.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Jolie, Angie, does that, yeah.
I just think that it's important to keep in mind before we vote to do something that this is a situation that could happen. I think it's important to learn from this. That's all I want to say.
I think you're very right, Julie.
Is that, Angie, any other questions?
I think I'm good.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Elise, very much.
I look forward to working on your grant when you get in.
Human resources, so consideration of approval of monthly personnel report.
Do you want to take a motion first?
Oh, yeah, I keep forgetting. Can I get a motion for that?
I move that we approve the monthly personnel report.
In a second?
I will second it.
Thank you.
And I don't have any updates to the personnel report that was included in your board packet. So it stands as it is.
That's the first month
It was
ever.
long enough, right?
Any questions from the board?
I do have a question, but I gotta find where it was.
Do we have public comment on this one?
So I noticed that we lost a paraeducator, and so now you have to fill that spot?
We hired a paraeducator, Brian DeWitt.
Okay, oh, I see, my bad. I was looking in the wrong place.
Don't tell me we lost somebody, Jeannie.
I know. And then I guess the school counselor, Henry, he's resigned as the department chair, but
Just
somebody else
as
is.
the department chair, and we haven't had anybody else that's stepped up to share that duty, but Mari Lou Saldana is still working as the department chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? And we don't have public comments, so all in favor?
Aye.
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 And student?
Nope, he can't vote.
Oh, no. Yep, sorry.
Sorry, Dylan. Announce the, how many?
Oh, it was 5-0, it passed unanimously 5-0. Public hearing on district's initial proposal for contract negotiations with West Sonoma County Teachers Association for 21-22.
So this is the opportunity for the public to make any comments on the district's initial proposal.
Okay. So I will open the public hearing. And is there anyone here tonight that wanted to make comment on the public hearing? Okay, then we will close the public hearing. All right, now consideration of approval of district's initial proposal for contract negotiations with West Sonoma County Teachers Association for 21-22. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the district's initial proposal for contract negotiations with WSCTA for 21-22.
I'll second.
And yeah.
Okay, so the annual reopener is the salary and wages, and also negotiating the school year calendar for 22-23. And the district's proposal is Article 7, transfers and vacancies, and Article 9, leaves.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions from the board? And do we have any public comment? All right, and so all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. And now we'll move on to consideration of acceptance of openers from West Sonoma County Teachers Association initial proposal for contract negotiations with the district for 21-22. Can I get a motion?
This one doesn't need a motion, Kelly. This is just the board has to accept it, so you don't have to vote on it. It's just accepting.
So what do I do? Just say
proposal.
we accept them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
We accept?
So they're asking to open Article 4, which is hours, and Article 9, which is leaves. And they also would like to participate in setting the 2022-23 school year calendar. They'd like to also review all of the MOUs that we have in place and review the local control accountability plan, and also work with the district to do a little bit of cleanup in the contract.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions on that?
Nope.
And do we have any public comment? All right. Well, we accept and well, thank you. Now we'll move on to facilities and maintenance. Discussion of facilities master plan. So this isn't in the packet, right? This wasn't in the packet.
No, this wasn't in the packet. I will add it later. I do have Kevin Chapin here from QKA. Unfortunately, Steve Kwok threw out his back today, so I'm sure he's watching from home. You're welcome to sit. I also have Denise Fisher here. She's part of our facilities team.
Thank you for letting us speak tonight about the facilities master planning at the district. I think this is going to be a fairly fun process as we move forward here. So thank you. QKA has actually worked with the district for close to a decade now. We began our relationship working on a facilities assessment back in 2011. Since then, we've completed approximately 19 projects, some being some fairly small projects to some large ones, including the band room at Annalee, the PAC here at Elmo, stadiums at both campuses, and the solar across the district. Kind of going back to the beginning of the relationship with the district, the first thing we did was a facilities assessment. So this is just looking at the bare bones of your existing facilities and seeing what they need to maintain their current level of care, and not so much looking at programmatic stuff for how the school can be improved to fit programs. And that facilities assessment really kind of, to no one's surprise, showed that most of the facilities are in need of modernization and upgrades. Many of the systems, the building systems, all the plumbing, heating, HVAC, electricals, are really at the end of their life and are in need of upgrades and replacement. There's significant ADA. In our case, ADA stands for Americans with Disabilities, and not average daily attendance. So it always kind of gets skewed a little bit. And then there's, roofing repairs, so we don't have leaking buildings. What we did find also was that the district office is really beyond repair, and putting any significant money into that is kind of just wasting money. At that time, back in 2011, just to maintain the current facilities, it was estimated to be $64 million. Now this is, 10 years ago, so construction prices have gone quite a bit up since then, so roughly escalation is double that at this point, just to maintain the existing facilities throughout the district. At the same time, if we did the facilities assessment, the district did pass a bond, Measure I, which is approximately $26 million, which did fund quite a few projects, including the band room, the stadiums, the PAC, phase one of the PAC, and the solar, as well as quite a few of the ongoing maintenance projects throughout the district. So that's kind of where we've been, and now we're going to talk about where we're going to head. And so facilities master planning is different than the facilities assessment. So facilities master plan is really just kind of a roadmap to identify where the district facilities are going to go. We're looking at this from not the small level of figuring out how many cabinets need to go in every classroom, but we're looking at this more like from the 50,000 foot level. And we're trying to solve some of the major issues like building placements, traffic and pedestrian circulation, and just kind of figuring out where stuff goes on the campus. So that's kind of what the overall master plan tries to figure out. And to get that, what we tend to try to do is first kick this off with a board workshop. It's a lot easier than to have a workshop where it's more interactive than what it could be tonight, where it's just a few questions here and there. And to really kind of figure out what the big goals are for the district, and get those kind of items out, and make sure that the as we say here, the curriculum drives the facilities. We want to make sure that what we develop supports the needs of the curriculum. After we get that, we'd like to tend to get into a bigger group. We like to get what we call a stakeholder committee. So this includes faculty, administrators, school board members, usually one or two, parents, students, since we're in a high school district, and members from the community, so we can all get these different views and perspectives, giving us input on the master plan. So we'll develop the master plan and where buildings and programs we want to live, and how we can develop it. And from that same group, we'll come up with kind of a list of priorities. What's the highest priority down to kind of what's the lowest priority, and kind of make that big list of projects that could potentially be done. From that, we have to create what we call an implementation plan. Even when you pass bonds, you don't get all the money at once, so we have to look at ways to what projects make the most sense with the amount of money that we have at that time. So after we create that implementation plan, it all comes back to the board for formal approval of the facilities master plan.
This is where I'll take it.
Okay.
Since we were talking about the facilities master plan, I also felt it was important to also address where we're at with Measure A funding to date. As you can see up there on the screen, we passed a bond for $91 million. Our first allocation of $20 million was roughly in August of 2018, and our second issuance was in June of 2020 for approximately $24 million, leaving us roughly $44 million of cash on hand and $47 million left in remaining authorizations that we can get at a later date. I've provided columns for 18, 19, 19, 20, 2021, and 21, 22. This tells you where our beginning balance was in each of those years, meaning that's what we started off with in the bank. You'll notice the ending fund balance in each year should match the beginning fund balance in the subsequent year. It shows the income. The income is, you can see from 18, 19, that 20 million was what we received in proceeds. You can see we expended $150,003. That was actually for the cost of issuance of the bond. We didn't actually spend any bond dollars in 18, 19 for projects, leaving us a remaining balance of roughly 20 million. Again, showing the income that we brought in and expenses going out. You can see we've spent to date roughly $21 million in Measure A bond funds, and we will be bringing an item back in November to identify all the projects that we have expended in those categories. But just to name a few, some of them were Phase 2 El Molino Performing Arts Center, all of the furniture that we've procured for when we pre-distance learning and pandemic, we were doing model classrooms for technology and furniture and testing things out. We also deployed close to $1.5 million worth of technology throughout distance learning. So those are just some of the expenditures that we've had as of recent, along with various deferred maintenance projects and projects that you guys have approved at the board level with respect to infrastructure upgrades to our IT, our telephone systems, and Prop 39 projects for interior and exterior lighting. So I will provide a more detailed report of those projects that contributed to that $21 million. But again, just we have approximately $23 million cash on hand right now, with 47 million remaining in future allocation.
So I know the kind of the big question is, well, how long does it take to get projects moving? And school construction, it does take quite a bit of time. The average project takes about 2 to 3 years from when we start to when the students occupy it. It takes time to do all the programming to figure out what goes into the buildings. We have to do all the documents, get it approved through Division of State Architect, get it bid, get it constructed, and get it closed out with certification. Schools, by nature, have a lot of stringent regulations to them. They are considered essential service buildings and are held to a higher degree of earthquake safety than commercial buildings or residential. They're guided by the Field Act, which is an act that came about in the 1920s after schools got heavily damaged in the Southern California earthquake. So it created what's known today as the Division of the State Architect, and that's who we get our approvals through. We don't go through local planning or approval for permits. We go through the Division of State Architect. All the projects end up getting closed with certification that states that they have been built to the standards that they're supposed to, and they have followed all the procedures. The average DSA approval time, just in that whole 2 to 3 year timeline, is around 6 months. So it does take quite a bit of time just to get them, the plans approved to go to construction. And currently, all the district facilities that we know of are closed with certification. So, kind of the next steps that we're looking at here is to try to schedule that board workshop to kind of work out some of the larger scale issues for the district. And then identify some of the non-programmatic projects, stuff that just needs to happen to keep the existing facilities safe and secure. And then identify the stakeholder group and start developing the master plan. And really that group is going to focus on figuring out kind of the programmatic requirements, and it'll be our job to really develop facilities that support those programs. So that's kind of our next steps, and I'll answer any questions.
What we really wanted to do tonight was kind of just showcase what the facility master planning process will look like. It will likely start in the next month or so and unfold over the next several months, with a consumable document likely being available in the springtime for us to have a larger scale discussion at the board level. And we just really wanted to emphasize that we have attempted to start this process for a few years and run into many unforeseen obstacles, Mother Nature being one of them, a global pandemic being the other. And it is exciting for me as the facilities director, I think, to be able to move the district forward with expending our bond and really engaging our stakeholders and determining what our next steps are as a district. So this is just a pleasure to be here to have this discussion tonight.
Okay, thank you. So any questions from the board? Any speaker cards on this item? Right, well, thank you for all your work on this and for bringing it forward, and I know you've been anxiously waiting to move this forward.
Anxiously,
so thank you.
Bated breath, anxious.
Kelly, I do have one comment or question. You have talked about having a board workshop. When do you foresee us doing that and or starting that? Do we want to do it before the end of the year?
Ideally, it would be great to do it pre-holidays. The holiday time period from Thanksgiving to Christmas tends to be a difficult time for a lot of people, and what it would allow us to do if it happened between now and Thanksgiving is really get our goals in order so that we can start off at the beginning of the calendar year with a robust committee ready to do the work.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Do we want to set a meeting, I guess is my question.
Well, I think, is it a separate meeting or would you do that within a board meeting?
Ideally, we would prefer to do it in a workshop setting where we are having more of a conversation about the processes. It can be done in a regular board meeting, but it could soak up
So if we
several
want to
hours.
schedule that before November, it might be good. I don't know that we want to do calendaring here because that will just be all of us looking at our calendars, which would be difficult, but maybe through Karen can help us, or send an email out to the board and just check availability for different dates so we can get that on the calendar.
That'd be great. Thank
Okay.
you. And thank you for being here tonight and waiting.
Thank you for being here and waiting.
Yeah, thank you. I know. Now, discussion of district-wide roofing master plan.
Tonight I have with us, I don't know if everyone remembered, I'll put this in presentation mode, hold on.
We don't have this.
Long
one.
ago.
Yeah, we have to get up again.
Hold on. So we have Bennett with Strata Architects and Vince with Garland here tonight. Bennett is one of the other architects that we're working with. We, if you go back in time, awarded 4 different architectural firms the ability to work on the bond projects, and they submitted for the roofing and HVAC. And again, this is just kind of going back in time. We started all of this stuff pre-pandemic and had to put it on pause. And so tonight, Bennett's going to just showcase where we've done kind of a roofing assessment across the board and where our priorities lie. And we're really opening this up for discussion because of needing to know where the board wants us to go with prioritizing these projects.
So thank you. Again, my name is Bennett Martin. I'm a principal with Strata Architects and Planners in Sonoma.
Just making sure they can hear you.
All right. And along with me is Vince Harper from Garland, who we've been working over the last year with on this kind of in the background. We started in early 20 to start looking at all the different buildings in the district and taking from the initial 2011 facilities assessment, the deferred maintenance on the buildings, as far as the roofing was concerned, kind of what buildings we needed to look at which campus. So just to give you an idea, every building in the district was visited, the roofs were walked and tested, and I can have Vince talk a little bit about that, about the process in which that we worked with him to do that. We also did look at roofs that were going to be repaired and or completely replaced and what effect that has on HVAC systems. And so part of this plan has a little bit of HVAC included into it, but that is something we're looking at. We're going to bring that at a later date in a more detailed report. So jumping from that, we can go to each campus, and if we start with the West County High School, you'll notice on the map, I've got a list of buildings down on the left, the priority list of the buildings, and each building is identified up in the plan, and then the asterisk next to the building is the requirement that those projects are going to need to go to DSA to be reviewed. So some of the projects do not need to go to DSA, so they can do a little faster, but each of the projects that do need to go to DSA will take a little bit longer. And I think Kevin even mentioned that in his presentation. So if we jump to the next page, we can tell that what we've done is kind of itemize the costs for each building. And again, this is just a first look. Some of the buildings have damage, significant damage due to water and rot that we just don't know yet. So there's going to be a little more investigation as each project gets looked at close. But we also did a priority list of 22, 23, 24 buildings that were kind of bad to good. So things that needed to be addressed immediately and things that could be put off a year or two. So each campus is basically lined out in this format. And again, I think as Jenny mentioned, we're just looking kind of for a direction on, sorry about the bubbles there, that got messed up on the print. So just kind of a direction on how we want to go with this as far as how we should kind of approach it from this point on. We've identified all the buildings of what needs to be done. It's just kind of following along with the master plan also, which is going to happen, which buildings are going to be utilized and or changed, and then how we want to tackle this deferred maintenance. Yeah, go ahead.
The other part of emphasizing kind of what Bennett was saying here is the reason we wanted to present to you tonight a full-scale look at our roofing plan is because we need direction on if we should be roofing buildings. Because the master plan is a little bit behind where we're at, we don't entirely know if buildings will still be there. As you can see from the priority list right here, you have the wood shop, the tech lab, the small gym, the weight room, the admin, the lower deck roof, the main gym, the auto shop, the cafeteria. The one that sticks out to me is the auto shop. Well, while we assessed it, we don't entirely know if it will be there forever. It is in pretty terrible condition, which is why we're not using it currently. Same thing with the Forestville campus. We do have parts and pieces of this campus currently being used, but there are other parts that aren't. And so just getting some general direction on how we should be proceeding forward with deferred maintenance. We're about to hit into the winter season. Some of these projects could not come to fruition for likely over a year, but some of them could come online relatively quickly. One that stands out to me is the C building at the Forestville campus that is currently being used by both the West County campus as well as Laguna. So this is just a discussion tonight. We're not asking for any action. We also identify at the former Laguna campus and the district office facilities that there are a total of 6 portable classrooms that also need to be roofed. We put a price tag to these, but these are buildings that we would not recommend replacing the roofs. We would actually just recommend replacing the building itself. So as you can see, this is a very long and lengthy conversation about how the direction we should be moving forward should go. We just wanted to basically daylight that there are things happening behind the scenes in order to move the facility projects forward, and we wanted to show you where we were at to date with this particular project. And I think we're happy to answer questions.
Comment on this? No comment. Okay. And Patrick, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. It seems to me that this would be a perfect topic to discuss during the workshop, because if we're going to marry these two projects together, right, master planning plus immediate needs for roofing, if things are not going to be there in the master plan, then perhaps they don't need to be on the roofing list. So I would suggest that we kind of marry the two things together and actually bring that up in the workshop.
And that's the direction I think that we would like to go. Just kind of going back a little bit in history to educate some of our newer board members. We had started down this process obviously pre-pandemic, and we thought, and pre-consolidation for that matter. So when we identify all these roofs, it's more of us just showing you guys, hey, this is what we had been doing. We had been making forward progress. We don't need a facility master plan committee to determine that we need to replace roofs. That's not something that we would traditionally do. Given our current situation, I think it is the pragmatic and appropriate thing to do is to marry them into whatever facility master plan. But also, if we are going to use some current facilities, they might not last as long as the master plan. So we might be making some recommendations that come forward to the board for your consideration that put roofs a little bit ahead of that master plan.
Go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It looked like there was some roofs that don't need DSA, and if they're ones that we're going to continue to use those buildings, then maybe those are ones that we should recommend, or you guys can recommend to us to roof those sooner than later. But otherwise, I agree that yes, if we're going to have to go through this whole process with DSA anyway, with whatever kind of master plan we come up with, it's a good idea to kind of put it all together. But again, if we've got critical need, I think then you need to let us know that.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? Jolie, and then I'll go to Tony.
Which buildings are being used that would not be able to be used if we had a lot of rain? How many buildings do we have that look that way?
Well, we have a lot of buildings on the Forestville campus that are in a category 1, which is immediate re-roof. Right now, building C is by far the worst. That is the culinary classrooms. So that would be one of the higher ticket recommendations. At the West County campus, whoosh, it's the admin wing, it's the gym, the lobby area, it's pretty much everything on the campus. That we've identified, I'm sorry, that we've identified. If the building is not identified on this, this spreadsheet, it is not, we're not suggesting it needs to be roofed within the next 5 years. It's already either been re-roofed, so, sorry, let me go back to my list.
So those are all buildings that could not be used if there was heavy rain?
Not be used, we make we take appropriate measures to ensure that the buildings are as leak-proof as possible. And so not in use, they continue to be in use, and we mitigate the leaking.
And what does that look like?
Oh God, a variety of measures. Vince over here has been on every single one of our roofs, and he'll likely help us with using a variety of products that would help patch leaks. We do have some window issues that leak, so we tarp over those areas. If you walk into the main building, you'll see all of the skylights are tarped. There is no mitigating anything with respect to those. Those are a straight up DSA project, no getting around it. They consider it part of the roof structure, and so we have to go through a full review on that. Those are the things that could take us longer. Those are the projects that we may, as a as a team of consultants, recommend that we start the process faster than the facility master planning process.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about safety issues in some of the buildings. I'd like to see those worked on first if there's a safety issue on a building that's heavily used.
And we do our best to address leaking roofs or spaces immediately and mitigate any potential threat or possibility of unsafe conditions. We're not unique in any school district. There's just never enough deferred maintenance, or there isn't deferred maintenance to fund projects like this year after year. Many roofs, and I'm sure both of our architects could attest to it, as they work primarily in school construction, that a lot of roofs in the state of California are in pretty bad condition, and we continue to do our best to Band-Aid those as much as possible. And now that we have a funding stream, we would like to rectify and take care of those as quickly as possible, but also keeping in mind any potential for massive modernization or remodels to buildings. The last thing I want to do is recommend to this board, to throw any good money for bad, because if we're going to tear down, I'm not suggesting it, I'm just saying it, like the industrial arts wing, and build a new facility, that is one of the worst buildings on campus that leaks.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, you had a question.
I was
Okay,
just going
all
to say,
right.
it kind of sounds to me like we need to plan the workshop sooner as opposed to later.
We would definitely like to get facility master planning behind us so that we can have a clear vision. And I really want to emphasize with facility master planning, it has to be curriculum driving that conversation, and it has to be programmatic. And because technically speaking, the facility assessment already told us the roadmap for what needs to happen to the buildings. We just now need to align the program.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, and thanks for being here so long. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Thank you.
So now, consideration of approval of award of contract with Premier 65 for installation of uninterruptible power supply across the district. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, Jenny.
I tried to do a better job than my last board report on a facility item, and I really went into detail explaining this one. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but this is an E-rate funded project. E-rate is a little different than how we normally bid projects. Normally you see us come to the board, ask for approval, we go out to bid, we come back, you award it. With E-rate, we do it completely opposite. So we have already gone through the RFP process, the selection process for the vendor, and submitted our application to the FCC. The FCC has notified us that we have been awarded the project, And now we're at the point where we can enter into a formal contract with our vendor to do uninterruptible power. And what that means is basically if we have a power outage, our critical infrastructure will stay up for 2 to 3 hours with a battery backup system. And given the state that we've been in with fires and floods and every other Mother Nature activity out there and PSPS days, this is definitely advantageous for our IT team to get us into a place where we can power down our critical infrastructure before we go through an outage, which degrades our equipment if it's turned off without our knowledge. You know, happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board? Any public comment on this item? All right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Student? Thank you. That motion carries 5-0 with a positive student vote. All right, thank you. And we have a list of future agenda items. Anything else that would like to add to the list? Well, I know the board workshop is something we're going to add, not as an agenda item, but anything else? All right, everyone have a great evening. Thank you.